Welcome back to Behind the Vocals. This week we have the honor and privilege of being joined by the one and only Steve Tinnon of Within the Ruins. It's a wonderful episode where we talk about everything from releasing a record during the COVID period, lyrics, comic books, and even the release of their brand new album, Phenomena 2. Get your popcorn and snacks, drinks, whatever ready because this is our longest episode to date. So kick back, get ready to enjoy, and let's get into the episode. All right, so we are joined by the one and only Mr. Steve Tinnon of Within the Ruins. Sir, how the hell are you?
I am doing great, brother. I am doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. It is way too damn hot where I'm at, so I'm over this already.
All right.
I'm ready for fall.
Don't get me started, man. Where do you live?
I'm in Tennessee. You're in Texas,
I'm
right?
in Texas.
Yeah, so it's.
I don't want to hear it.
What's the temperature today? How bad is it?
I think today it's 97, 98. Yesterday was actually a nice, cool, calm 89. but a few days ago we had like 102, 103.
Dude, no.
Yeah. It's all smooth sailing down here, buddy.
We're like 95, 96 today, and it's just stupid. The humidity and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm over it. I'm done with it.
Well, my girlfriend and her family, we went to Vegas a couple weeks ago, and it was like hot air coming at you. Like we have like humidity down here, but over there it's just like you go out to the strip and it's just hot air in your face, and it was like that could be a little worse. So maybe we should both not complain, not complain too much.
Oh man, so how's everything been going though? You just released your new album, Phenomena 2. Yeah. How has that been?
It's been great, man. It's been really cool. It's one of those things where like I know what I'm up against, and I know there are shoes to fill, and it was daunting. I've used that word specifically before, but I think that's really what comes to mind when I think about it. So it's kind of like a little worried, but always excited because new album time is really fun. Because you work on stuff for so long and then it finally comes out and you're like, all right, we did it. But it's great, man. All the response has been really good. And, I try not to dive too deep and just get sucked in, but sometimes you can't help it. But a lot of the responses have been really good. So I'm happy about it.
The album is fantastic. I've already listened to it multiple times through, and dude, you guys crushed it.
Thank you,
man.
Did
awesome, man. Really, really liked it. Heard a lot of good compliments about it too from different metalheads, around talking about the album. A lot of people really digging it. So props to you guys, man.
Right on, man. Yeah, it was a lot of work, but it's one of those ones where you have to, if we're going for a concept like that and really want to make it something special and not be like, here's another album, but then just slap the Phenomena 2 logo on it. Like we have to really pay attention to a lot of the stuff that we were doing, and we did, and I think it shows. And so hearing that is makes me grateful. So thank you.
We'll definitely dive into it a little more. I'd like to talk a little more about the album a little later on within the questions. But how we like to start them off, I'd just like to let you introduce yourself, kind of give you a floor, tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and those that may not know that much about you and all that good stuff.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm Steve. I've been Within the Ruins for a little over 6 years now. Before that, I was in a band called Silence the Messenger with our bass player, Paolo. He played guitar in that, and we did that for at least 10 years or so. We did that for a long time. And then before that, I got into even just playing in bands and being into heavy stuff because I originally played the violin in the orchestra for a long time. I was a little orc dork. Yeah.
Okay.
From like elementary school. My parents had put me into a magnet school in like first grade, and then I played up until I tried to play it into high school some, but when you're high school and you're a teenager, it's not cool anymore. So I switched from violin to guitar. So I was like, okay, I can still play strings. That makes sense to me in my brain. So I just went from here to here. And then that into high school, you meet other people that into the same stuff. And then that led to a couple bands here and there. And then STM and now Ruins. So that's the condensed version. And I'm here now. Couldn't be more stoked.
Nice. So when are you going to convince Joe to let you have a little violin solo or something?
Man, I actually still have, a couple of my violins. I have like a practice one that I would just take to school and back. Then I have my nice one for concerts and stuff. I could probably get that thing touched up. It's one that was passed down from my great grandmother to my aunt, but then when I was playing a lot, she let me have it, and I'm not sure if I have to give it back or not at some point, maybe. But if you look in the little F hole, it's from 1813, I think is when it is. So it's old. So if he ever did give me the green light, I would use that thing and get it like touched up a little bit, make sure it's ready to go. And I don't know, maybe next album.
That'd be crazy.
I say that, but then he could just like, I'll just program it. I'm not gonna waste time setting up a mic and all this other stuff. So
how is working with Joe? Joe is insane. Like his writing is crazy.
Yep. Yeah, it's nuts. I always say when I first joined and I first had to start writing stuff, my brain was Zach Galifianakis from The Hangover, where he's counting cards and all the math is floating in the symbols are floating in the air. That's me when I first started, and occasionally, still sometimes, I'm like, "What the fuck is this man doing?" But it's like when you sit with it for a long time, and then the product is finished, and you're like, "Okay, it makes perfect sense now." But like in that moment, you're like, "Holy crap!" But he's so good, man. I don't even know. Sometimes I have a hard time finding the words to describe him. But he's just one of those guys. It's like a virtuoso in his own world, and he does it his way, and it always comes out insane. And it's great. So just from a writing perspective, it's nuts. Like there are times from just like as many times as you hear Within the Ruins song, you're always like, that's Within the Ruins.
Yeah.
But when I'm hearing something for the first time, I still get kind of blown away. I'm like, Jesus, man, what are you doing? Like in the best way. So, and then recording, it's like the studio is up in Massachusetts. It's up where the band is based out of Westfield. So a lot of the recording is just us in his studio. Blackheart was basically me, him, and Paolo for the most part, and drummer pops in from time to time because he works at the brewery that is also part of the studio. This one, Phenomena 2, was actually really just me and Joe sitting in the studio bouncing ideas back and forth off each other. So in that sense, working with Joe is also great because I try to come in as prepared as I can with fully fledged out ideas and most of my stuff just ready to go. There are parts like maybe before I start rambling too on it's great. I like working with Joe a lot. He just has one of those brains. It's like I couldn't have thought of that if I tried, and it's awesome. So and it works out for us this way too because flying out there to be in the studio for a week, knock out 2 or 3 songs, come back, go back out a couple months later, works really well for everybody's schedule. Instead of like everybody cramming into a studio for like a month and then being like, well, you get what we did and that's it and see ya. So working this way is pretty beneficial to us.
Did Joe owns his own studio?
Yeah. So I'll elaborate on that a little bit. He owns his own studio up in Westfield. But it's not like it's not really like, hey, can you record my band type of thing. Yeah. It's really more of like, this is our home base. This is where we do stuff. We record, we rehearse before shows and stuff. But it's attached to Tin Bridge Brewing, his brewery. So we literally will be up there rehearsing or recording, and if we need a break, we literally open a door and his brewery is right there. And it's like it's a business. So it's open to the public and stuff. I mean, obviously not the studio, but I mean, it's if you know the band, you know it's about as perfect as a setup as it gets.
Yeah.
So it's great. Yeah. So he owns both of those, and they just happen to be in the same building, and then he lives about 10 minutes away. So it's nice, tight knit, controlled situation.
That's really sick. That's super sick. I have to say, you kind of already said it, but he has his own style, and Within the Ruins, from the first thing I heard with Creature and all that stuff to now, whenever you hear Within the Ruins song, you're like, that's Within the Ruins. Like it stands out, his style and everything, and it's kind of like the
whichever album.
Yeah, 100%.
Whichever album you pick, you'll notice. Yeah. He'll tell you there's differences in like songwriting, like song structure and stuff from Creature and Vade up till now, but even with that, like you could tell it's just what he does.
His guitar playing, the way he does certain things, and the melody and stuff like that. Yeah, 100%. How is it with the long distance with the band? Is it tough at all with you being in Texas and then being up there?
I mean, only in the sense that like we can't all jam together in a room constantly.
Yeah.
But it's one of those like you do this long enough to where you know what needs to be done. You know what you need to do on your end as a grown adult. Like practice your stuff at home, and then we meet up, run through the set a couple times, and then we're good. Otherwise, it's not that different from being in a band with everybody being in the same city or even the same state. That's what technology's for now. We can do everything. He just writes all the stuff there, and put stuff in the Dropbox. I can listen to it here, which I very much prefer. Like Powell and I's old band back in the day, it got even better towards the end of that band's career, like with technology. But like when we were first writing our first couple EP albums, it was like meet up at the storage unit. We're going to play the songs over and over. And if we have something new, we're going to sit there as a group of 5 guys and play that, like that section over to like, you know, until we all get it. And I'm thinking of lyrics as I go. It was just, I was used to that old school stuff. And then as time moves on, man, you can just, here you go. Here's a new song. Just listen to it. Tell me what you guys think. It's great. So
it's crazy how that's evolved over the years. Like you said, they used to just have to go to a space and practice together. Now, you know, people are all across the world, the United States, everything, just sending lyrics and songs back and forth and working on pieces in their own area. It's wild.
Yeah. And I'd say there's something to be said about the old school way of doing it. Everybody getting into a room and just jamming. There's something to that. And I think it makes, it probably creates different songs, but there's something special about being in that room and feeling that energy with everybody. Like when you all hit the same thing at the same time and somebody suggests an idea and you all nail it. Like there's something about that that's special, for sure. But honestly, when it comes down to it, as you get older, we all got lives and we're all doing stuff. So it's like, if there's a way to be more efficient, let's fucking do it. And we do, and it's great. It works out really well for us, especially with, like I said, the traveling back and forth. If I go up there for a week and knock out a couple songs and come back, then I can sit on those songs in the Dropbox and just listen to them. And if I want to make changes to stuff, be like, oh, maybe this pattern works better. Oh, I wish I hit that low better, or just even little things. Or maybe I do certain vocal patterns and we just knock them out in the studio. And Joe's like, you know what? Actually, now if I change the lead to this, it would sound cool around what you did. So being able to sit on this stuff is also very advantageous for us. So it works out well.
Do you have a setup at home to record any vocals or do anything, or do you just go pretty much up there only?
No, I mean, what I do though is, so I guess this is where my old school mentality comes in, is that, so when I do sit down and do all the lyrics and stuff, so I'll have a section in my phone for all the lyrics typed out. And then when I sit down with a song in the Dropbox is that when I start to space them out and put them in order and where they need to go, but like on a piece of paper. So like I'll make little changes in the note, but then when I write them down, I'll like, by the time I'm done with the full song, it's got scratches and little notations and all this stuff on it. But I have like a system. I have a key in my head where I'm like, if I put a comma, that's a little pause. If I put a little triangle, I'm coming in on the up, or a ... means I'm holding the scream out. Little things like that where so even though I don't have a system on my desk to record things myself, I more or less will be going up there knowing what my patterns were and what I did. Which then also is totally fine because Joe doesn't mind like building the song from the ground up. I'll usually just do a skeleton of the entire thing when I get there, and then we go section by section. But I mean, I wouldn't mind having my own setup to do that kind of stuff. I just haven't had a giant need to. Everything we've been doing this particular way has worked out really well for us, so I haven't done. I mean, we'll see. Maybe in the future, yeah, I'll get set up and I'll just be another vocalist doing videos on the internet. But right now I've got shit to do, man. I don't have time for all that.
So do you kind of have that friendly like competition with Joe? Whenever I talk to Tim, I know we were talking about Tim a little while ago. I asked him how it was writing with Joe, going from like a deathcore band to Joe's writing, which, you know, way more techie and stuff. And he said it was kind of Joe would write something and be like, have fun. And then I would come back and be like, this is what I got. And be like, all right, damn, good job. Like
he does. Yeah, he does do that sometimes. And I've noticed it with drummer too. Like when he'll like, here's what I'm thinking for drums. And drum will be like, what the fuck are you doing? How am I supposed to, you know, whatever. Like, but in some way it is sort of a little bit of a friendly challenge to be like, here's what I wrote. Let's figure it out. And then, and if you have to change something, of course we can change it. But, I don't know. I think a lot of there are times when Joe and I are very on the same page a lot when it comes to this stuff, and that's what makes it really easy. We don't disagree a whole lot. We both have ideas, and sometimes like his version of what I had in my head is better, or sometimes he'll be like, "Oh, I don't need to change anything. I really like what you already did." So I think there's a give and take in that aspect, but I wouldn't say though that I go in trying to challenge Joe, because I honestly don't think I would win. I'm not the worst at what I do, but I think he's better at what he does than I am at what I do. So I don't, but I do every once in a while when I go in there and he's like, He's like, whoa, okay, that's cool. Let's do it again. So just that maybe a little bit, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't say I I have enough hill of a climb to try and just make it through the song without trying to trying to impress Joe. But
It's definitely I think it's a good thing though, because it definitely it kind of makes you get a little bit out of your comfort zone in parts, and you have to like keep evolving as a singer, you know, to do the parts and stuff. So it's definitely a good thing.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And being in a band, it's you always want to push yourself as a musician and not get stuck doing the same thing. But in a band like this, I mean, you have to be willing to step outside that comfort zone and try new things and test yourself. And I definitely have since I got here, which is great. I like it. It's made me better. And there are even times when I told Joe, I was like I need a second with like this particular section. Give me a second, because it might click for like my background in music is different than his background. So certain things click really well with me and some things click really well with him. And so we find a middle ground on stuff. So in that sense, where our brains are slightly different is where we, again, find a middle ground and make it work. But it's pushing ourselves constantly. I know he doesn't like writing the same things over and over, which is, again, interesting, because no matter what you hear, you know it's Joe, you know it's Within the Ruins, but he's always pushing the boundaries, man. I don't know how he does it. He doesn't like being stuck writing the same shit. He wants to try new stuff. And I try to do the same thing when I write, also lyrics wise, and when I'm in the studio, different tones and all kinds of, like, I try too. So it's, again, it's like a friendly pushing back and forth a little bit, but yeah,
a healthy challenge.
Healthy, right? I'd agree.
Yeah. So I have to ask, how was the Within the Ruins beer? You guys had that at your release, right? And then you have it.
I didn't get to go to the release, so I don't know. I was bummed out. We were talking about me and Paolo flying out there for that, and then not even maybe a couple days later, we started talking about, hey, we need to get these, which we can touch on later. But the headlining dates we're doing in October, we started discussing those and who has plans for what and what flights are going to be good and all that. So once we nailed all that down, we just started getting super close to the actual release itself, and then at that point flights were kind of expensive. Not that we would have made it happen, but we did have plans to go up there, and it just didn't work out. So I don't know how the beer tastes, and if he doesn't have any left for me to try, so I can keep a can, I'm gonna be furious. But
surely he stuck some back for you.
I would imagine he did.
It's from his brewery, right?
Yeah, it's Tinbridge.
Then he has to have a can.
He has to. I say that I'm drinking my coffee out of a Tinbridge glass. Actually, by the way, everything I have so much Tinbridge stuff. I have shirts and hats. And I think I'm wearing a Tinbridge hat now. Actually, that thing about it too.
If you're listening, make sure to go check out Tinbridge.
Yeah, if you're in the area, it's in Westfield, Massachusetts. Go to Tinbridge. That's Joe's brewery. I would imagine the beer is great. It's a New England IPA. We called it Daywalker based off of one of the songs, just because that's cool title, but also because we wanted to make an IPA that you could kind of drink during the day, like a session IPA that's not super heavy and you can only have one or two and then you're done. So we thought that name worked pretty perfectly. But if I do get to try the beer, I'll let you know.
Hell yeah.
Hopefully find out.
Hell yeah. So I have to, last thing before we get back in the questions, do you ever call drummer anything other than drummer? I have to know, because as long as I have been around, like known the guys, stuff like that, it's always been drummer. Like that's all I've ever heard is drummer.
That is the main thing, yeah. But sometimes we call him Bone. It evolved into Drum Bone. Drummer went from drummer to drum bone and then to bone. So we'll just say like, where's Bone at or something. But never call him Kevin.
Yeah, I think first time I think I met the guys, they were actually on tour with She's a Liar with Tim's old band. And they kept yelling like drummer stuff. I'm like, damn, they're just not even calling a guy by his name. They're just calling him drummer the whole time, and then found out like that's actually what he's called. Like everybody just calls him drummer.
He goes by that. If you look into the thank you sections of the albums and stuff, it says drummer. I think there's one, maybe I forget which album it is, but I think there's one where it says Kevin. But no, I don't ever. Nah, man, he's drummer.
All right. Well, let's get back to the questions. Okay, so how long have you been doing vocals?
Yeah, let's see. Late high school, I think. So I'd say probably I was doing. Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by doing. actually in bands, I'd say I was doing backup vocals for a couple bands. I played bass and guitar in a couple bands. And I would do backup vocals, but there'd be an actual singer. And then that turned into, I originally joined Silence the Messenger as a bass player for a little bit. I think I played maybe 1 or 2 shows as the bass player, but then really quickly they kicked the guitar or the singer out, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to try the vocals for these few shows we already have booked?" And I was like, "Well, I could try." First rehearsal, I started going through the songs, and they're like, "Yeah, that's it. You're just going to stay there." And that was probably 2007 or 8, somewhere in there. But then I'd say where I was even interested in doing them was a long time ago when I was at like a late elementary school, middle school. Yeah, okay, maybe that's when I was listening, but I'd say starting to just scream and do stuff. I'd say late middle school, high school, because I grew up on like nu metal. Nu metal was my thing, and if that part of the conversation goes there, we can do that. But I will go down the fucking rabbit hole about nu metal and never stop. So you hear the basic stuff that was out at that time. I think the first thing I ever saw was "Freak on a Leash" by Korn. Yep. The music video was on at some sleepover I was at, and then I lived in Utah for a few years, and in Texas we don't have basements, but in Utah we did. So there'd be times that my bedroom was in the basement, and when my parents would leave to go do stuff, I would put on Korn or Linkin Park or Disturbed or whatever, and I would just scream in my basement. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just screaming, trying to keep up, but just trying to scream along with it because I was interested. But then as I got older, I realized that kind of what I was doing is a lot of those guys are actually pretty good vocalists. And so I was kind of like testing myself inadvertently by trying to go back and forth between the screaming and the singing without really realizing what I was doing, if there's any technique involved. I was just kind of doing it. So again, I guess it depends on how long you mean doing vocals, but I was at least practicing or trying when I was a teenager. I mean, just giving it my best in the basement. In the basement.
So were those nu metal bands what inspired you to become a vocalist?
Oh, I'd have to say so. Yeah. I mean, I liked other stuff. It wasn't just nu metal, obviously, but because really, if anything came first, it was orchestra stuff. It was classical music. But vocals wise, I'd say yeah, that's definitely what sucked me in and made me really interested in it. With a lot of that angst that came along with the nu metal stuff. Even if you're, again, a teenager, didn't really know per se what they were getting at, you could hear it and you could kind of feel it. And just listening to it, watching the music video, the visual aspect was always interesting. And then live too. It's just, there's something about the delivery that always brought me in. And I'd say that's probably what was the most interesting aspect to all the nu metal stuff to me, was the vocals. Yeah.
Was nu metal kind of your gateway to more the heavier side of things? You know, like all the
mm-hmm. Yeah, because I would watch. I'd probably be able to find one if I went. I have a bunch of VHS in another room, and I used to record the old Headbangers Ball episodes with Jamie Josta. So I'd record certain music videos that I like, and then like when the show wasn't on, I would just put in those and just watch the videos in order again. So I'd be recording stuff. You know, Korn, and then like Flaw. Flaw was there for some reason. I remember Edema, but then would get mixed in though is like Hatebreed stuff, and then there'd be Lamb of God and Killswitch and that kind of thing. So that was where like that all started to cross, and get into heavier stuff. I didn't know what Hatebreed was. I didn't know what hardcore was, but there was something. I heard Perseverance, and I was like, "What is this? This is stupid." Like it was sort of kind of in that realm. But it's just in that general, like there's screaming and there's heavy guitars. It was down-tuned, and I was like, this is cool. Whatever it is, it's cool. And I'd say definitely the gateway, because I'm just watching MTV at the time. There was no social media, so you had to go old school, and whatever you heard on the radio, what you saw on TV was what you got.
Back when MTV played music videos and had stuff.
Yep, when they had stuff.
Yeah, not just ridiculousness 24/7.
No, yeah. And so whatever they were pumping out, I was listening to. So. But then on that same token, I was listening to like pop punk and stuff too. I love pop punk. I'm a giant, like not modern pop punk. I like old school, just Blink-182, Green Day, Sum 41, New Found Glory, that kind of stuff. But again, all stuff that was just on MTV and the radio, and so it's like, oh, here you go. So that I had no choice but to get sucked into all the other heavy stuff that was getting pumped out at the time.
It's crazy how good the music was back there in that era. Like there was just we every now and then I'll go back and I'll put it on like a playlist with like all that stuff just kind of going through, and I'm like, oh, I forgot all about this band. This song was so good, and just you keep the nostalgia. And the music then was fantastic.
Yeah, well, nostalgia is definitely a big part of it, hence a phenomena too, you know, but nostalgia is great. But then when you actually do take the time to, especially if you're a musician or you at least know something about music, then there's a lot to appreciate there. And I think specifically from a vocalist perspective, uh, that's kind of what I was kind of getting at earlier. Is some of those guys were like really good vocalists.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have they didn't always have digital tracks to just record over and over and over. A lot of it originally was tape, and so you had to nail it, or you're wasting a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
And it's impressive. And um, and what really nailed that into the coffin for me was, I think about 4 years ago or so, me and Pal and I's old drummer Fernando with a couple other guys, we did a cover of "Disaster Piece" by Slipknot, and when I went to his studio to go record it, what I wanted to do was I didn't want to take like one line at a time and like perfect it. I was like, no, dude, I want to do I want to do the big sections as much as I can. I want to do big sections and try and nail as much of it as I can in like those one takes and singular takes, and still have it line up and still have it be sound good and not sloppy and all over the place. Um, it because that's what Corey would have to do with
Yeah.
that older stuff, is you'd have to nail it. You'd have to do a lot of it in singular takes, big chunks at a time, if not the whole song. So I was like, let me try it that way. And it was difficult, but interesting to do, though, to kind of see what you're capable of. But it really puts things into perspective about recording process and the amount of talent involved for guys like that at that time, for sure.
Absolutely. All right. So you already mentioned you played violin, you play guitar, bass. Do you play any other instruments before you got into vocals? Do you have drums that you can play? Like, is there
Not
anything
to
else you
save my
play?
life. No, I don't. I'm trying to think. I'm like, I don't think I have any other instruments now. Because as much as I was doing like violin and guitar stuff, I also played some sports as a kid. I played baseball, so I didn't have a ton of time to learn a lot. But when I did the violin, I did it for a long time. Like I said, I was in a magnet school, and then I would do all these like district competitions. I got good at it. I'll pat myself on the back a little bit. I got pretty good. To where I was getting kind of cocky as a teenager, where I'm like, I don't want to practice. I want to do other stuff. I want to go hang out with my friends. So my parents would only like lie for me on my practice sheets, where like, you have to practice in an hour a day or whatever. Like they lied for me for a little bit, but then eventually they stopped, and I was just like, well, but mom, I already know I know the songs that they're making us play in school. I already know them. I got it down. I don't need to practice it. And then eventually they just stopped, and like, well, I started not doing great in the class because I wasn't practicing, and so I was like, well, I'm done then. Guitar. And I think because I focused so much on that, I probably didn't have a lot of time to learn anything else. I always wanted to learn piano. Piano is one that I could play a couple things here and there, but not like, I wasn't very ambidextrous in that sense. Like with same thing with drums, I was never, for some reason, yeah, violin and guitar I could do all this, but I don't know. I think I really only had time for the stringed instruments that I had time for, and then I was off to the races.
Okay. So when you started learning vocals, how did you learn them? I mean, you've been doing them for so long. There really wasn't a wealth of knowledge like on the internet and stuff back then.
No.
So it was kind of a lot of, was it just trial and error, like imitating, like you said, different songs, learning between sing and scream and stuff like that, or
Yeah,
how
that's
did you
really
learn?
what a lot of it was. I'm very much an old school kind of guy in that sense. It was there was no, like you said, there was no internet to learn from really at that time. I mean, there was the internet, but it wasn't anybody teaching you screaming vocals. So I was, like I said, just kind of screaming my head off in the basement, and I obviously didn't know what I was doing, and yes, I would kind of hurt my throat sometimes, but you do it long enough, and then your throat starts to kind of get used to it at least a little bit, and then plus, I mean, going to shows all the time, that was just I used to be that kid that wanted to get up to the front and be like, I know all the words, and it's like, give me the microphone. So doing that all the time too, I think was kind of helping develop my voice, and then singing, just actual singing, I would say helped a lot. Around that time when I started doing them for bands, I was pretty into Michael Bublé. Actually, I still like him a lot, but at that time I owned a few of the CDs and I would sing along a lot. So I felt like there was just, and with some of the new metal singing too, I was just kind of developing my voice without really realizing it. And then, and actually I can use this as a segue. When I first started doing vocals for Silence the Messenger full time, my guitar player was like, "Hey, you should look into the Melissa Cross stuff, the Zen of Screaming." And I don't know what that is, but I'll check it out. And he worked at Guitar Center at the time, so he's like, "I'll get you a copy." So he did, and I would watch the DVD a bunch of times. I'd lay on the floor practicing stuff, the pencil in the mouth, all that, and then the other CD with all the vocal
Yep.
warm up stuff. That is actually in my car right now. Still, I still have that. Partially because you can't really find the vocal warm ups online anywhere, but I'm sure they're floating around somewhere. But I bought it. I want to listen to it, and so I have that CD in my car still. So that's really where I started to learn. It's not exactly what I'm doing, but it's how I do it, and so that taught me to breathe better. That taught me different ways to focus and warm up. And so that definitely helped a lot, and that's really all there was at the time that I can remember anyways. And there was a day that our band was playing a local show at the White Rabbit, and it was no, sorry, it wasn't a local show, we were the local band, and it was a Within the Ruins show. And I was doing the Zen of Screaming stuff in my car warming up, excuse me, because we were about to play. And Tim comes over and he knocks on my window. He's like, "Hey, is that Melissa Cross? Is that Zen of Screaming?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Are you about to go on?" And I was like, "Yeah, we're up next." And he's like, "All right, cool. I'll check it all out." So he checked us out, and we started hanging out with each other. And that was probably 2009. So he was still fresh in the band too at that point. And that's where the friendship between our two bands started. And then eventually they needed a new bass player, so they called Paolo. A couple years later, they needed a new vocalist, and they called me. That's the short version.
Yeah.
But I figured I'd use that as a segue to get into that.
Nice. And the Zen of Screaming, that is definitely a staple on this show. It gets referenced pretty much every episode. I mean, and like you said there, I learned back when Zen of Screaming was starting to come out. And before that, there was no knowledge really. I mean, you may have like one or two really shitty YouTube videos that weren't really explaining or like, this is what I do. And they would just scream bloody murder and nothing good. And then of course everybody be like, well, this is what I do. But how you do vocals, I mean, there's similarities, but how you get to that point and me, it's going to be different every person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so Zen of Screaming is definitely a staple. And yeah, that's how I learned. So what were some early mistakes you made when you were learning? Just like pushing too hard or...
Oh, yeah, I was absolutely pushing too hard. And the one that always stuck with me the most was breathing. Especially for the type of vocals that I do. I don't do just the throat stuff. I really project, and I do a lot of that. I just, like I said, I'm more of an old school guy. That's just how I...
So you're really loud when you do vocals?
I'm loud.
I am too. I catch hell about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, like, that once you learn to control it and do it a certain way, it's not that means it's a bad way of doing it. There are just different styles of doing it. And that's just how I grew up doing it. But you just need to know that, because if you put too much strain on just the throat and you're not using everything else, then you could damage yourself. But again, it's just, there are different styles, and that's what I grew up doing, and that's what I stuck with. I never really felt... What I always liked about the Melissa Cross stuff was that she says, "I'm not going to change how you sound. I'm just going to change how you do it," and in so many words. And I was like, okay, cool, because I kind of liked what I was doing, but I just wanted to be better at it. But I'd say probably one of the bigger things was the breathing. The top of the tank, I always remember that was a big deal. So now anytime I'm doing cardio, especially to get ready for shows, I try to do my breathing techniques while I'm doing the cardio to help me prepare a little bit more so for the actual set. Pushing too hard, sure, I think everybody does that, just because you don't know what you're doing. Like, oh, they're screaming their heads off. I mean, kind of, maybe a little, but it's very controlled. It's a very controlled screaming your head off, sort of. Again, depending on who you are. But I think my biggest thing that I took away was the breathing. The breathing was super important for the style that I was doing. So the not just doing that's killer. And so that was probably one of the biggest things that I took.
Having the reservoir tank, as she calls it, right?
Yep.
With like
the tank.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Okay, so did you ever have a moment where it clicked? You had like an aha moment when you were doing them, where you're like, okay, now I got it. From, like you said, sometimes your throat would hurt a little bit, maybe here and there. But did you ever have a moment where you're like, okay, this is what I need to do. Like, this is the range. This is how hard to push. So
I think it was. I think after I really sat down with the DVD for a while, and then just started going through a couple practices, just rehearsals. I don't really recall a specific time where I was like, that's it. Like, that's how I'm going to be good. I think it was just I think there was just a big enough difference probably at a couple practices where I noticed I was like, oh, this is easier now. this is once I put it into actually into practice and started doing it for real, then when I really grasped it. It's one thing to sit there and listen and just be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, and let me take notes, whatever. Yeah, that makes sense. But once you actually start doing it, and you're like, oh, okay, then you have a perspective on why she's telling you that, and then when you go back and listen to it again, then you have hindsight of like, okay, so now I see what she's saying about this, and so when I did this, and blah, it kind of came into like a full circle thing eventually. But I think it was probably just one of the first 2 or 3 practices going through the songs and stuff where I was like, actually using these techniques is the thing. Yeah.
The first time I watched that DVD, I was just like you said, taking notes. It's like, okay, that makes sense. But then at the same time, I'm like, I don't, whatever, sure. And then you go and you like, it's not muscle memory, but you're trying to implement those ideas, and then you're like, oh, okay, I got what you're saying now. And then
yeah, I mean, it kind of turns into sort of muscle memory. I mean, and you're never going to be perfect by any means, but well, maybe except for a couple guys. But it does. It's sort of a muscle memory thing, but not exactly. It's just you have to. I think it's just practice. There's a lot of it that just really gets you to understand why she's telling you the things she's telling you. And like you said, first time watching it, you're like, I don't know half of what you're talking about. I don't just,
over the pencil and all that stuff. You're just like, okay.
I was not good at that one. That one seemed weird to me, but I was like, I'll try it. And where's the nearest pencil? Let me, whatever. where is it? Let me see what I can do here. But, and actually, I still have.
Nice.
And then I had to buy it again because I lost the CD for one of them, so I had to buy it again. And then I had the Zen of Screaming 2, actually, that I haven't seen anywhere else lately. I haven't watched that one in a while. I mostly stick to the basics, but I got them.
The basics a classic, man. It had so many people on it. Like, I was surprised all the artists.
That's what impressed me. That's what impressed me is like when they're all sitting on the bus and like saying good things. I was like, that's.
I mean, it's a list of people, like bigger names.
It's like Randy from Lamb of God, I think, is on there. Byron from God Forbid. The
Brian from Shadows Fall's on there. And
Brian from Shadows Fall, yeah.
There's a bunch.
I was like, dang. I listen to all of these bands, so if they're doing it, I must be doing the right thing. So,
and all of them, touring high level, it's like it's working for them. So, need to listen to that advice.
When you see those guys on MTV, you're like, well, that's it. They've clearly made it. They're crushing it. They're, making millions of dollars. But like that, I mean, you kind of put those pieces together though. You see if they are doing this and it got them there, then I can do this and I can probably get there. No brainer. Why wouldn't I put some effort into honing in my craft?
She was smart though to carve out that niche early with that, because
absolutely.
A lot of people said, learning to sing and stuff at a younger age, you would bring up screaming, doing the more angsty vocals and stuff like that, and like singing teachers would just be like, no, we're not doing that.
Don't do that. Yeah. Don't do that. Yeah. Lo and behold, there are ways to do it. So
and there's a whole now she's made a career off of it, so I mean it worked.
Oh, it's great, man. And also on adding on to that, like because clearly I've had these for a long time and I know they have dust on them. I have dust on my fingers. Just the fact that they're DVDs should tell you how old they are. So obviously I had it for a long time, knew who she was, and I happened to be, it was some Whitechapel show, I think, here in town, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I just happened to be walking in the lobby of the venue, like merch area, whatever. And I see this nice little old lady just walking, and I was like, there's no way. Hold on. So I kind of like looked for half a second, and then I was like, fuck, it's probably her. So I kind of like, I scurry over and I was like, I'm so sorry to bother you, but are you? And she goes, yes, I am. And I was like, like meet any band dude, like that's cool. There's probably a couple exceptions where I'd be like, okay, man, maybe if I met like Corey Taylor or Jonathan Davis or something, I'd be like, okay, that's sick. I'm a little struck here, but otherwise it's like most band dudes are pretty much, they're all band dudes, and we're all like, okay, we get it. You do the same thing. I got it. Cool. Nice to meet you. But when I saw her walking, I was like, oh, no way. And then I got a picture and stuff, and then we exchanged emails. So I'd sent her some stuff that we were working on, that Ruins was working on. And she's like, oh, you're an E1 band. That's cool. I work with some of these other guys and so. And then eventually she's like, she gave me her phone number and she's like, just text me if you need anything. And I was just like, oh my God.
That's
so
awesome.
There's a couple times where I did actually text her. I was like, hey, we have this coming up and I'm kind of running into this issue. And I'm like, I'm not trying to get like free information from you, but if you have a quick tip you could toss my way, I'd be super grateful. Because so apparently what she does is she lived, I might have it backwards. She goes back and forth between San Antonio and New York, because I think her mom either lives in one or the other, and I can't remember off the top of my head. But that's why I happened to just see her at a San Antonio show, and then I've seen her a couple times since, and it's nice running. And she's just the sweetest. Have you ever gotten to meet her? Or?
I have not got to meet her. I would probably be starstruck, like you said, just because I mean I've watched that DVD way too many times and heard her voice with the warm ups and all that stuff.
You kind of have the room memorized, like with the piano.
Yeah.
And the
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
We had Brian on weeks back, and he told me that he has the original iPod where she uploaded the warm ups just for him. He said, "I am scared every time I turn on that it's not going to turn on, but it says hello Brian," and it's like her voice, and then she's like, "Let's do our warm ups."
Oh God, that's so cool. Well, and see, like I don't have like kind of like I told you earlier before we started that I do have a laptop, but it's just old and I don't trust it.
Yeah.
But it's old enough that it has a CD drive, so if I wanted to, I could try to rip the songs onto it and flip them out into an email or something and get them to myself that way. But I don't know. I'm just scared to turn the thing on and start doing it, and then it eats my disc, and then I'm like, oh, I don't have it anymore. And so I kind of have the same thing. I never owned a digital version of them. My bass player does actually. He has them in his phone because he uses Apple Music. I use Spotify, but he's got them. So sometimes I'm like, give me your phone.
I think I might have them digital if you want them. I probably could send them over. I could probably like email them to you or something.
If you do, I'll take them. I mean, I've asked him a couple times for him, but he just never gets around to it. But
yeah, I can definitely shoot those over to you.
Sorry, Paolo, love you.
All right. So, do you have a routine to get ready for shows that you do like warm-ups, and does it fluctuate or vary depending on if it's like a one-off show, if you're on tour, you're going to the studio, or even if you're under the weather?
Yeah, it definitely will fluctuate through. It's situational. I'd say my standard at like just any given show is nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, I'll have some, if just room temperature water. If there's tea or something lying around, I might have some. Or if there's like a coffee shop nearby, I might go get some. I don't do that every single time, although it probably wouldn't hurt. That's really about it. And I do some of like just the vocal warm up stuff, that whatever, because the day is always hectic usually. So I try to, off the top of my head, do the warm ups, just a few of them or a handful, just to kind of get in the zone. But especially as you get a few days into a tour, I mean, you're broken in for the most part. You don't need to do it every day. You kind of get into that sweet spot, that zone where you're like, hell yeah, I'm good. So it might fluctuate a little bit on those. And of course, if you're sick, I mean, it sucks, but you got to do the vocal rest. It's super important.
Yep.
Do the vocal rest. Text your bandmates and tell them to fuck off. Don't talk to me. Leave me alone. If you do, I'm using sign language, and I only know a couple of those. So, and then studio is very different though. Studio is very much like because when you get into the zone in the studio, I don't know if you do the same thing, but when we're experimenting and trying stuff, I'm all over the place. I always have, like, I'll have my room temperature water, just like a bottle of water. Especially if we're in the studio, I'm gonna have a beer sitting there. I always have a bottle of whiskey, and then there's probably like some tea. I'll have a tea. So whatever I'm feeling I need in that moment, depending on the tones or whatever we're shooting for to hit in that specific spot, it changes all the time. That one's very much like, I'm gonna do what I need to do in the moment. Excuse me, and I'll figure it out later. I think that's probably it. I think that's probably about it. And then the only thing that's different now is that because we live in Texas and the band's in Mass, is that we're not in a room rehearsing all the time. So I'm not always warmed up. I'm not always ready to go. So, I mean, I do, like I said, because the CD's in my car, I do the vocal warm-ups, here and there. But especially if I know shows are coming up, I'll just run through them maybe 2 or 3 times a week, just to kind of keep the voice ready for the day, and then get in that zone. And I'll do what I can to like scream some in the car, like when I get home, because it's kind of just me and my dogs roaming around the house these days. And So I'll scream to kind of just get my voice back in check. But that also fluctuates because we aren't touring a whole lot, so we're doing shows kind of here and there, and so it's not like we're gone 6 months out of the year and my voice is constantly in shape. So um, it's not that it's in a way it's like a small uphill battle, and then it comes down, and it kind of peaks and valleys. Uh, but then I just focus more on the vocal warm up stuff when we don't have shows, or to get ready for them. Sorry.
Okay.
But it's all different. It's all very situational. Like I said, I don't have like one thing to do every single time.
What about on tour when you're out for an extended period? Do you kind of start off with warm ups and then it kind of tapers off? Like, all right, my voice is pretty much like you said, warmed up, in shape, and ready to go, and now I just rest until pretty much time to do it.
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone, but I think I've just from talking to other guys, I think I've kind of seen a similar pattern. It might take 2 or 3 days to kind of get broken in, especially if you're doing a full set a few nights in a row. But then after a few days, and you're like, all right, I'm back in my groove, and not that you would fully stop your warm ups or anything. Good to still, although sometimes yes, but I think instinctively I would still be like, all right, let me find some hot tea and some honey or something, just because that's where my brain goes. If I'm in that mood, I'm like, okay, I'm not like, oh, I'm hurting, I need this. I'm like, where's some tea? Let's just that is almost a muscle memory.
Yeah.
Where's some tea? And then you'll have your occasional off night where you're just like, oh man, I need to really focus. So you really sit down and think about how much vocal rest do I need to do, and how much tea do I need to drink? How many times do I tell everyone to shut up? But it varies. It varies on tour, yeah. But you do hit that sweet spot. I think everybody does, where you're just I'm good. Like, so if I go a couple nights and I don't actually warm up, I might just do a couple like screams in the green room or something, just to be like tone, low, mid, high, whatever. Cool. Just a couple of those, and I'm good.
Yeah.
When you're in a sweet spot. So it happens, and it's tough to not get lazy with it. Sometimes you just get so like, man, the tour's going well. I'm just kind of hanging out with everybody. This venue's cool. Oh wait, we got to go to dinner, whatever. It's tough to kind of like, oops, I didn't have time tonight. But
yeah,
it happens. But
it kind of, like you said, it kind of seems to be the consensus, touring musicians, that maybe the first few days to a week, really like regimented warm ups just to get the voice going, and then after that, it's like you kind of hit the groove and you do a little bit, but you're kind of just every night you're essentially doing it, so you're just you're in the routine.
You're in the routine, and you're keeping yourself warmed up by doing that. So
absolutely. Okay, so do you do anything? I know you mentioned tea. Do you do anything for vocal care?
No, not specifically, honestly. Like I said, because we're not touring 6-8 months out of the year, I don't have a specific regimen that I do. The thing is, I have habits that are not great for vocalists. I'm a drinker and I love hot sauce. So, so I'm maybe not in the best position, but when I do know that I need to do things, I dial it back, and it sucks because I always want to. The first thing I want to do after a set is like, oh man, hell yeah, we just crushed it. Where's my beer? Which I don't think is like really the end of the world if a couple beers, but like a shot of whiskey before or during, like that's not going to make or break your set. But if it was like heavily, like here's one thing that I did do. There was a time when I was trying to like actually cut back on some dietary stuff and like drink. I was like still drink, but drink a little differently. So I was trying to just do like vodka sodas at a show instead of White Claw or beer. And then and I work at a bar. I'm a bartender, so instead of taking shots of whiskey or tequila, I would do just vodka to bring that calorie count down just a little bit. When you look at it big picture, not worth it at all, because those couple extra calories you would get from having a shot of whiskey or tequila doesn't make up for having a shot of vodka, because the vodka is a neutral grain spirit, so it's really the closest to having straight alcohol. And so I felt like the more shots of just vodka I was doing, I was actually harming my throat a little bit, and I could tell like it would be sore more often, and I would, even when I would try to practice or rehearse my screams, I wasn't getting the tones that I normally do. So I was like, oh, the vodka's not actually a great idea. So I was trying to do better to lose some weight, but it was actually fucking up the thing that was actually more important than that. Yeah. You're in metal. Nobody cares if you're fucking skinny, fat, chubby, whatever. No, who cares? Like, it's as long as you look cool, whatever, you sound good, whatever, fine. So I was like, it's not worth messing with this to save a few calories here and there. So when I know that something's coming up, yeah, I cut back on certain things, and I lean into other stuff. Sometimes chips actually in the studio. Now that I think, I don't know why, but chips, we always like have Doritos lying around, and I don't know, maybe it just creates this like little bit of thick, crunchy. I don't know. It's a coating. It's not a great coating, but it adds like an interesting texture. I don't know why. That's not really a vocal care thing, but I think I just forgot to I forgot to mention it. It's again probably not good at all. I don't have great habits, but I do try to control them sometimes when I know that stuff has to get done.
So in other words, if you want to sound like Steve from Within the Ruins, then eat Doritos and scream.
Oh man, Doritos, hot sauce, drink booze. But see, when I think about it though, there are guys that probably do way worse. Like they only drink like whiskey, and like some of those old school cats, like they just drink and they smoke a shit ton of cigarettes and all that stuff. Like it could be way worse. And I mean, you definitely hear it in their voice a little bit, but it's like that's their routine, that's what works for them. Whatever. I at least try to find a balance of like, if I'm gonna have something spicy, probably earlier in the day, not later towards when the set is gonna start or we're in the studio. Like I can't, as much as there's a really good wings place that's kind of down the street from the studio. They have great wings, and I love getting the hotter flavors. But if I know that I got to record, I can't get the hot flavors. I got to get honey mustard and barbecue and maybe like a medium hot. I can't do the big one. So I'm conscious of it. I'm not saying I fuck off and do stuff that I shouldn't be doing all the time, always. Because that's bad. But I'm more conscious of it when we have stuff coming up.
Yeah. And like I said before, it's crazy, you know, what works for you and what you do is different than everybody else. And that's one of the things that I really like about this show is just hearing the different variations for everybody. It's really cool just to hear it.
Yeah, it's what balances out and works for you. Because what I do is not going to be could be detrimental to what you do,
right.
or what you do just doesn't get me where I need to be. And like it's as long as you know when to like to chill with it and not
knowing your body and your voice, pretty much.
You know your body, what your boundaries are, know your voice. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I was gonna say there's no right or wrong. There's definitely wrong answers, but it's how often do you do the wrong answers? I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. So, well, first off, before I go to the next question, do you have a go-to whiskey? You've mentioned whiskey a few times. What's your go-to?
Well, see, the thing, because I'm a bartender, I get into different ones at different times. But I think I'd say if I have a staple that I always want around, it's just Jameson. Jameson's the easy, like it's Irish, so it's whiskey, but it's like Irish whiskeys tend to be a little bit softer and sweeter, so it's easier to do more of them. But that's the staple, I'd say. If I have my current favorite bourbon is Old Forester 1920.
Okay.
It's their Prohibition era style bourbon, so that it's 115 proof, so it's higher up there in proof. So you get that really nice like spice burn from it, but it has a really nice body to it, so it tastes substantial and it doesn't taste thin and weird. That's my current go-to as far as like if I want to sip on something cool.
Okay.
But if I need a staple that's going to be in the van at any given point, or in a rider or whatever, or in the studio, it's Jameson. It'll always be Jameson.
I feel like that was also Tim's. I feel like that's what he.
I think so too. Yeah.
Because I know I asked about like routine and stuff, and it was what was it, like a shot or two of whiskey and then down a beer and I'm ready to go. Like it was pretty much like.
Yeah. I remember him saying that, and it's not to say that I don't do those sometimes, but I try not to have like a full beer or something right before our set, because for Tim is easy because like he wrote all those songs. They're easy. They're muscle memory for him. For me, some of them, not the ones that I wrote for the most part, but the other ones, like I do have to focus a little bit more. So I haven't gotten to a point yet where I'm like, I can drink whatever I want before a set. I could do like a shot or two and then get up there and be fine. But like, not anytime soon would you catch me up there like super drunk. I wouldn't be able to pull it off. So, but I have done the beer. Like a lot of times on the road, Joe will want to find like the closest brewery to the venue, like something local, and we can go. Obviously, have just a nicer meal than gas station food, but also test out local beers. So of course, like if we're doing that for lunch or something, yeah, I'll have a beer too, and then calm down. Maybe have a shot of whiskey before or whatever. Sure, okay. Cool. But
hell yeah. What's Within the Ruins beer of choice right now? Do you guys have like a staple one? I feel like he said it was Bush before. They drank a lot of Bush.
Back in the day, yes, but lately So okay, well, it's a two-prong because especially if we're up north, we're always going to have some Tinbridge stuff. Even when the guys have come down a couple times, Joe ships Tinbridge down here, so we do have some. So we have the nicer beers, but we also have to have water beers, is what we call them.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So the water beers of choice these days are usually Miller Lite, but sometimes Coors Light.
Okay.
I do remember those back in the day. It was like when we were first hanging out with them. It was a lot of Busch Light. I remember those days for sure. But lately stepped it up a bit and had Miller Lite or Coors Light. But all of us like. Powell is not as big of a drinker as the rest of us, but White Claws though we actually they're easy. They're easy. They taste fine. They taste good. Because I mean, honestly, like as much as we do love beer, it's great. But drinking 43 Miller Lights in a day will add up and make you feel, you know what I mean? So like, you know what? Have some nice light fruity bubbles. That tastes fine. All you White Claw haters, I don't give a shit. There's a goal. There's a goal here, people.
Hell yeah. Okay, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit. And we're gonna go to lyrics. So this should be
okay.
This should be fun. Where do you pull from for lyrics? Which I know phenomena, concept. But
sure.
Generally speaking, do you like to go personal experience, or do you like concept better, or do you like to hybrid and kind of mix them together? What's kind of your go-to?
Well, the thing is, with anything previous to Phenomena I never got to do a concept album before, really. I would go back and forth between, it's all personal stuff for the most part. But I would go back and forth between just being, and I think this is where like a band like Hatebreed would kind of creep its way back into my thought process. Is like I could speak very straightforward. I always found just like power in that, and like some of those just cool hardcore bands from the MySpace days. Those were always cool too. I'm aware hardcore bands were around before MySpace, but that was when it hit me. I always appreciated that. Like, no, I'm just going to tell you what I want to say, and I'm just going to be in your face about it. I always appreciated that. But then I also, maybe it's the inner orchestra kid in me. I don't know. There's something about metaphor and kind of playing with the words a little bit more that I always liked. So I would kind of just go back and forth between those two. But then, so I would really just kind of pull from whatever I was feeling at the time or sad about or upset about and stretch those out. And that's really any Silence the Messenger stuff that you listen to. That's basically all it would be, until we get to Phenomena 2 now. So Blackheart was a good example of like that. I was putting everything I had. I had just gotten in the band. I was going through a ton of shit. That's why it's dark. That's why it's sad. That's why it's pissed off. I was just going through I was just in a not great place. And so I laid all those cards on the table and was just like, here's what I've got right now. And I think the guys had some stuff that they were pissed off about too. So it kind of right time, right place for that, for everybody on that one. Which was a little scary because it's like, I'm the new guy in the band. People might expect me to come in and write, an Invade album or an Elite album. And that was not me at the time. I came in, I was like, here's who I am. Here's what I'm doing. It's this is what I'm feeling right now. And I'm just going to give you that. So I made myself vulnerable in a couple ways of being the new guy, but also being like, here's my personal stuff. But then now Phenomena 2, yeah, it's concept. So I'm pulling from the comics, the movies, the shows, everything. So it's, but for everything else, that was all pretty much personal stuff. I've never really dove into concept albums before. I like it. I'm a fan of it. I just never did.
Okay. How was the reception for you whenever you joined Within the Ruins? How was it? Did fans pretty happy as far? Like, how was the feedback to you?
Overall, everything I've seen was just very positive. You're never going to get away from the people that are like, I miss Tim or where's Tim. It's just going to be part of it. When a guy that's been in the band for like 10 years leaves, they're gonna. Yeah. It sounds different, and so some people that equates to bad. When I came in, I was again I was transitioning from being in a deathcore band to just a straight deathcore band to Ruins. So I wasn't trying to emulate Tim by any means. I still wanted to bring my own style to the table, but also not stray too far out and just feel like I didn't fit the band either. But overall, it was people were very receptive and, like, it's not Tim, it's different, but I like it. This is cool. If I had to pick any direction, it was always leaning positive. You're just going to have some people that are like, and awesome. Like, that's fine. It's subjective. You're not going to please everybody, and
Yeah.
I'm sure I didn't please everybody with Phenomena too. Although again, very positive so far. But that's just what it is. I can't really look into it too much and take too much of it to heart.
Yeah.
So, but overall, cool.
Was it intimidating at all? You know, like you said, Tim being around for 10 years and then you kind of stepping in and not only trying to keep within the ruins to what the fans love, but also adding your voice and having your, you know, your print on it.
Yeah, because you're also walking a fine line with that on another level. That the band is guitar focused a lot.
Yeah.
People really appreciate that about the band, and that doesn't hurt my feelings at all. I sit back and I'm like, holy shit. So when people are always like, do you guys have tab books? Do you have playthroughs of this, or what's Joe doing on this? Like, I don't ever take any of that personally, because that's just what this band has kind of always been known for in a good way. Not that the vocals don't matter. There are bands where I think it might not, where it might not really. They're kind of just there. But this is one where, like, yeah, people love the vocals, but it's not first and up front for everybody. So I may have forgot the second part of your question. What was the
just how was it intimidating at all? And
intimidating, yeah. So that's what I was saying. I'm sorry. That was the line I was also walking to. Was like, yeah, it's a little intimidating. Just you're replacing a guy that's been there for a long time, but then also the band is a lot bigger than my previous band, so I'm also on a bigger pedestal here that I need to step up. So, yeah, I'm not gonna lie and pretend like, no, man, I fucking had it in the bag the whole time. Hell no, I didn't. I was nervous but excited, because on some level I thought when Silence the Messenger broke up, I thought that was it for me. And then I get a phone call in the middle of their headliner where they're like, hey, can you fly out like tomorrow and finish this tour for us? And I was like, okay, let me see. First off, let me ask my job. And then they said, yeah. And then I did it. And then when that was done, I was like, cool, maybe that was my last hurrah. Maybe I'm just done. And that was a cool way. That'd be a cool way to go out with the boys. And then, so when it came time for me to actually join, then I was like, okay. It took some convincing, actually, too. I'll be honest. It took a couple phone calls from Joe, a couple phone calls from Scott Lee, and then I did it. But I was still. It's a little intimidating because there's some pressure, but it's also exciting because I'm like, fuck, this is my second chance. So I think the excitement took over, and I told myself that I was like, I will kick your ass if you don't do this. Go do it. Go do it now. Stop thinking so much. Just go. And yeah, intimidating for sure, but worth every second of anxiety to get here now.
Oh yeah. You just mentioned a legendary name, Scott Lee. I can't tell you how many DVDs and stuff I've seen him on and everything. Just staple in the metal industry up north, especially around Mass.
Absolute legend, man. I think the biggest one for me was that Killswitch DVD.
Yeah,
which is probably
I was
down there somewhere.
Band DVD nerd. It's just I went through them religiously, all of them. Just you about to break it out? Yes, I got that exact one.
Yeah,
I got it right now.
Yeah, it's next. Sounds of the Underground, Lamb of Gods, Bleeding Through, Disaster Piece, Throwdown, Godsmack, Korn, just Hatebreed. But yeah, I was a giant DVD nerd too, because I always liked that behind the scenes stuff. Like, it's cool just watching the concert and stuff, but behind the scenes was always cool to me because, again, didn't have the internet like that at the time. So that was your only glimpse into that world of seeing these guys as people and what it's like behind the curtain.
Absolutely. That's why I started this, just because I always, like I said, I would nerd out over that, watching DVDs. I don't know how many times I've watched them and how many times I've woke up to like the Black Dahlia murder title music from The Menu playing like on repeat.
Right.
Stuff like that. And I always love the behind the scenes, seeing more than just the performer and, what you see on the music video or on stage, the stuff that goes on and how they get ready and stuff. So I thought this would be an interesting series. So that's why we started this.
Oh, cool. Do you have a favorite?
Favorite DVD or
music DVD? Yeah, music DVD. Yeah.
Ooh, Black Dahlia was really good. I really liked Parkways just because Parkway made me want to go all over the world. They made it look, they just made
it look so fun.
Yeah, you're just like, oh, that's a blast. They're living the life.
Yep.
Never mind, they're sleeping in fields and all this stuff. Yeah. But Killswitch, Lamb of God was a really good one. Unearth, I really like Unearth. The old As I Lay Dying. I'm trying to think of the name of it. That one was pretty good.
I'm like, wait, do I have it?
This Is Who We Are, maybe? No, is that right?
That sounds right.
It's right when Josh joined. He was kind of like the tail end of the DVD.
Maybe I don't have it. I thought I did. Maybe I don't have it. There's one of those like that one in the Parkway. Like the Parkway, I know I've seen, but I don't think I ever actually owned that one. Mine are a lot more. I have a couple Lamb of Gods. I have that Kill Switch. A lot of mine are new metal. Oh, I have that Chimera one. A lot of mine are more new metal. Looking at some of the Deftones live in Hawaii.
Oh, that's a fantastic band.
Oh yeah, Il Nino, Disturbed, Mudvayne, Manson, Mudvayne again.
Oh hell yeah.
Different Corn, Godsmack. Yeah, I was a giant nerd on those. I think that my favorite one's probably that Mudvayne live in Peoria when LD50 came out, and they played the hometown show, and they just basically played all of LD50. And I think I probably just scratched that one to death by just watching it so many times. Yeah. Like I said, we don't have to get started on new metal. I just won't shut up if we do. So, but that's cool. I'm a giant DVD nerd. On
that's yeah. The wife makes fun of me. You know, I have that collection. I'm just like, don't touch it. You don't know how much time has been spent on these DVDs. Like I could damn near recite them at this point. You know, I put them on.
Mm-hmm. I would do that too. I'd like speak along to it sometimes because I know what he's gonna say.
Yeah. All right, so we kind of touched on lyrics. I wanted to talk about Phenomena 2 for just a second, and then we'll kind of get back to the normal questions. But
sure.
It's been, 10 years since Phenomena?
Yeah, almost to the month. I think it was July. I want to say it's July. It's July or August, but I'm pretty sure July.
Okay.
10 years to the month.
So I want to know how the selection process for this goes. How did you choose what characters to talk about? And I'm kind of curious because the first song you released, I don't know. Did you talk to Tim at all before you did this?
No, and I was gonna bring that up, but I did not talk to Tim.
The reason I ask is whenever I talked to him, I was like, "Well, if you did another concept album about comic, who would you have?" And he said Punisher and Daredevil that stood out to me. And then the first song you released, Punisher, and I was like, "What is this? This is awesome!" Like,
well, okay. When I say I didn't talk to Tim, what I mean to say is that I didn't talk to him about like, hey, what was your process like? How did you do this? Whatever. I didn't talk to him in that sense. When we played, we did a quick little run a few months ago with Oceano, and we played in Brooklyn, and we all went to a bar after and just kind of got drunk and talked. And it was cool because we also posted a picture of it. I don't know if you saw it, but there were multiple Within the Ruins members at that show, and we took one big group photo. It was really cool. It was just a big homie fest.
Isn't that when Tim played in front of the Within the Ruins banner with his new band?
That's the one. That's that one, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we did all like at the bar. We were like, hey man, just letting you know that we're doing a Phenomena 2. Thought you'd think it's cool. And so we were all drunk at the bar talking about it, like in that sense. And then of course I told him what characters I had picked, but in the sense of like asking him for advice or anything, no, I didn't do any of that. So I'm not sure which way you meant the question, but I did hear that one. So when I did watch the interview and he said Punisher, and I was like, oh, it's funny. So I didn't know. I didn't think that he was going to spill the beans, but I did think it was interesting.
So he knew this was him letting us know ahead of time.
Well, like, so we were pretty drunk, so I don't know how much he remembered. And it was a fun night. It was a fun night, but Joe came over a couple times. And he's like, "Here's shots for the singers," and like Adam from Oceano showed up. And he's like, "Yeah." Like, what you know? And he's like, "Nah, I'm good. You guys." I'm like, all right. So the picking them. Well, I had to start with just triple checking which ones he already did.
Yeah.
Because even if because it was a little different because Gods is Professor X and Magneto. Mm-hmm. So they're both off limits now. And then I just looked at every other one. I'm like, okay, a little jealous because he got the pick of the litter. I mean, he could do in him, so he got some ones that I probably would have done. So I started there, and I said, okay, well, what did he already do? And then I just picked ones that, off the top of my head, I already knew would be interesting. Once I've eliminated those options, okay, who has interesting backstories? And what I wanted to do was kind of a similar thing, like come at them from the perspective of the character, from their point of view, but also really try to keep a grounded nature, like a real life nature of what the backstory is or whatever they're going through. Now, some of it you can't really get away from, like whatever superpowers might be relevant to the story. Like one of the songs is about Galactus. There's not a way to ground that in real life, but then I was picking characters that also I knew just had cool backstories that would be relatable in at least some way. So that was part of it. The other part of it was I also wanted to pick ones that would also extend the relevancy of the album to 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now. What characters are going to be coming down the pipe?
Okay.
Whether it's DC or MCU. So like and that was actually, so I guess Galactus is a good example of that. That Fantastic Four had been announced, but they hadn't announced every detail about it yet. So I was like, well, there's no way they bring back Fantastic Four and don't do Galactus. I'm sure they'll do Silver Surfer, but there's no way either in that movie or at some point, whether it's that movie or one of the next Avengers movies, that they don't do Galactus. There's no way. So I was like, I'm taking a chance here, but even if they don't bring that character back, it would still be a fun song to write. That's just a cool character, and it'll just sound big and epic and spacey, and that'll just be fun. But I was like, but I think it's happening. Then, man, not even like a month or so, maybe two, go by, and they announce Galactus, and they're like, "Yep, we're doing Galactus." And here are the rumors of who might be playing him. I think Antonio Banderas was a rumor at one point, and I was like, an interesting choice, but okay, sure. He was like one of the first little. Yeah, it was weird. I was like, I don't know, maybe if he get his voice right, his face is covered up with the helmet and stuff, sure, could work. But lo and behold, they confirmed, yeah, we're doing Galactus, especially because you have to make up for the fucking stupid cloud Galactus they did in the other one.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, how could you fuck this up so bad?
You have to wonder what goes on in those boardrooms and those meetings when they come up with some of these ideas. It's like
you have to, and like sewing up Deadpool's mouth. Like, yeah, come on, that's So that was an example of like I want to pick characters that either are currently relevant or going to be happening. So it's another reason to talk about the album down the road, and that was one of them. So I kind of combined those two things, like what's happening now and what's going to be happening, because a character that would be a cool one to do would be Thanos, but like he just got. Yeah. We already went through this a few years ago. It's not like, sure, that song could be cool, but I'm trying to think on some level, I'm thinking marketability.
Yeah. Smart.
So yeah. So, and then from there, I kind of just narrowed it down, and I would also listen to the songs that Joe had sent over, and I'd say, okay, well, this one, and Galactus is another example of this one. That song he sent over, there's multiple spots in there where it just sounded really spacey to me. I was picturing stars and explosions, and then that last big breakdown at the very end is very open, and I was like, I'm picturing outer space, darkness, and like planets just getting destroyed. So some songs would actually just kind of hit me, and it'd be like, this sounds like it could be that character. So it's kind of just a mixture of all that stuff. And then I have a list of characters on my phone that I didn't even use, and I would just put check marks by them of the ones that I decided on as I went along. And so I still have some in my back pocket that I could do if we ever did a Phenomena 3. But that was kind of my thought process, was what did Tim not do, what's relevant and what's relatable.
Okay. Were you whose idea was it to do this, to bring it back, like this whole concept?
It was mine, actually.
Hell yeah.
It's an awesome
concept. I really dig it. And with how popular, MCU, DC, everything is right now, I mean, it's, it feeds right in.
It's a great time to do it. It's a great time to do it, especially as they're kind of like fixing some stuff. Like DC's hitting the reset button. MCU is in a lull, but they're like fixing stuff now with Deadpool and like the X-Men and everything. So that in itself is also a really good timing. So that was part of what I first brought it up as kind of like a half-assed, like in the group chat a few years ago. I was like, no, I could do Phenomena 2, haha. And then kind of just got dismissed, but I wasn't really thinking about it too much at the time. And then as Joe puts more songs into the Dropbox, and as he gets ready, like, hey, we need to start scheduling some recording time. Steve, where are you at lyrically? Like, what do you think you want to do? And I actually brought it up again. And I was like, well, I did. Now that we could do a Phenomena 2, and this time it kind of stuck a little bit more. I think that I brought it up, and I think maybe this time Paolo was like, yeah, that could actually be cool. And Joe was still a little like, oh, I don't know. And I said that I think it was at least one song, maybe Demon Killer, that he sent over that just actually kind of sounded Phenomena-esque to me. And I brought it up, and the more he thought about it, then he was like, okay, cool. I think this could be cool. And I looked at it, and I was like, because if we do this, by the time this comes out and we're done with everything, it'll be a 10-year anniversary of the first one. And last year we had talked about doing a 10-year of Elite, but then nothing ever came of it. So this worked out really well. And I was like, dude, okay, so let's picture it. We can do a 10-year of this, and it's a sequel. Obviously, it's one of the most loved albums in the catalog. Um, it could be this cool big release for everything. It'd be awesome from a marketing perspective. And and then once he was kind of like, okay, I think that could be a thing, then he started writing more in a phenomena style too. Like so it kind of like just all rolled into each other from there. But also because kind of like I mentioned earlier, I was in a way different headspace when Blackheart came out. So this time I was like, I'm not going to just write that again for no reason. Like
Yeah.
I want it to feel something the same way I felt when I listened to new metal bands when I was young. Like I want to give that back, like so people can connect with it on some level. And I just wasn't feeling that anymore. I didn't want to fake it. I wanted it to be authentic in one way or another. And Blackheart was just a product of that time in my life, and which I don't regret any of it. I love that album. I thought it turned out really cool, but I didn't want to do that again. So I was like, what could I do that's not that? And then it just clicked with me one day. I was like, this is perfect, because I too love all these characters and stories and stuff. And I was like, in a lot of ways, I'm a pretty good guy to take over for Tim. If he was into it and was able to do this, I can do it too. And
so clearly from your shirt, you're a big comic book fan as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I have like a giant comic connection. I don't know if it's Gambit, if you guys can see a little bit.
And those that weren't here, you missed when we first got on the call, an awesome impersonation.
Oh yeah, yeah. We'll see if I do it again. About to make a name for myself. And
you gotta do that live now.
Shit. Maybe I do.
Right before a breakdown or something, just
right. Just throw it in.
Yeah.
People will be like, I see what you did there. What did you just ask me? We just got on the impression and you threw me.
Oh, comic book
fan. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I own some comics, but I was more of a what TV shows are on and what movies are. Like my favorite movie of all time, not even just comic movie, my favorite actual movie is the Batman 1989 with Keaton and Jack Nicholson. That's my favorite movie.
Would Batman be your favorite character?
Yeah, I'd say so, but that's why I couldn't do it, because Tim already did Dark Monarch.
Yes.
So
same for me. Batman's always been my favorite. Just
right. And what an easy character to like describe the background to, right?
Yeah.
It's relatable. Loses his parents and whatever. Not the like Richie Rich part of it, but yeah, I've always just loved this stuff since I was a kid. And I've happened to grow up through like the Blade movies, and then when the X-Men movies came out, and then all that. The only one I'd say I wasn't really around for was the Christopher Reeve Superman stuff, but I'm still going to see that on TV because it was still popular. That's how influential those movies were. They were always playing on TV. So yeah, I've always loved this stuff. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm the know-it-all comic guy that knows every detail from every storyline and say, well, yeah, but he does this and this one, but this and this one, and did you know that also this? And but like, dude, come on, I don't have that much time on my hands, but like I know enough to be able to, like, if you ask me about why I chose a lyric for a song, I'll tell you why I chose it. And I pulled from all the different aspects that I could for this. And yeah, so again, I think it just kind of worked out really well that Tim had already done something like this, and I could kind of keep that torch going.
Yeah. And it's a really cool thing for the band too, having like that kind of, like you said, that in your catalog. Now you have two of these, and it's a cool little like niche, if you will, because there's not a lot of comic albums,
Yeah, not really. I mean, it was just kind of if I remember the story correctly, I want to say that they were already touring off of Elite a lot, and the label was like, hey, we need another album. And I think Tim was like, well, I could write about this stuff. And it kind of just happened. So it was, excuse me again. And the thing was too, and so that was 2014. MCU was going.
Yeah,
but it was going. It was off and running, but it wasn't like hadn't taken over the world just yet. It was probably in the middle of doing that. But again, that's why I thought a little bit deeper about, okay, here's where we are in this whole world of DC and MCU stuff going on. How do I capitalize on that? If we're going to do this, let's do it in a proper way. So yeah, it's cool to have the second one. And again, you kind of ask yourself, like, does it set up for a third one? I wouldn't say that it doesn't. Yeah. But again, but now it's like, that's not a focus right now. So now It's not like we're gonna put out a Phenomena 3 2 years from now. We're not gonna
Yeah.
do that. So, but yeah, it's cool to have in the catalog. It's just a cool idea, man. All the stars really aligned for this, and I really just couldn't be happier with it.
Do you find it harder to I guess get into it, if you will, as far as like conceptual stuff, rather than like with Blackheart it being more personal? You know,
Right.
like as far as like the emotional aspect on stage and like
Yeah.
that anger.
Well, we've only had a few shows that we played. We've played Castle in the Sky a handful of times, but I mean, it feels good to play that one. I'd say I get into it, but like in a different way. Yeah, it's not like I'm not emotionally connected to it, but on some small level, yes, because I tried to make the songs relatable.
Yeah.
That like there's a human element involved there. But I'd say I got really into it in a different way. It's just because I do like this stuff a lot. I do really enjoy these movies and stories and shows and everything. That it was really fun. I had a lot of fun writing this record. Whereas like Blackheart was really hard to write. Like it came naturally, but it was also really difficult to think of those words, to write them down, to scream them in the studio, to just going through every little aspect of that was difficult. As naturally as it came to me, it was still hard, but I enjoyed it. But this one, I really enjoyed just taking the time to dive into. Like, this is like when you get a homework assignment as a kid, but somehow it's like something fun that you need to do, like for a project
Yeah.
or something. You're like, I actually don't mind putting the work into this. That was this for me. Is I would take each song, took at least 2 separate nights, sometimes more. I would always take at least one night to do just my homework on the character in the background. So it's just sit and I would look up different comic stories, basically what aligns as far as the origins, and then where they go from there and how they potentially connect to what's going on now. I would do all my recon in one night, and just write down cool concepts, lyrics, ideas, whatever. And then that would be just one night. I would use like a handful of hours of just sitting and going through stuff, double checking my work. And then I would take a separate night some other time to sit down and take those lyrics and put pen to paper for that. So the process took a lot longer to do, but it was because I wanted to make sure I got all my ducks in a row. But I even hesitate to call it homework, because it was, sure, it's work, but it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed doing this. So I would happily do another one if that came down the pipe later.
I'm assuming Joe was to blame for Enigma and the X-Men. That was you? As soon as I heard that, I was just like, damn.
Yeah, that was me.
There's straight nostalgia. You know, X-Men 97 is what, a couple months out from being back on, and then of course the X-Men cartoon back the 90s.
Yeah. So I mean, again, and I'm not saying this is like, hey, look at me, but a lot of this was my idea. And so I took on a lot of the brunt, though, of like, okay, well, if this is all your thing, then just tell us what you want to do. And so I did have a lot of work to put in and get stuff. And Joe likes some of this stuff. It's not that he doesn't. I think it was maybe why I was a little hesitant in the first place, but it's not his wheelhouse. It's not like he's a nerd about any stuff. Like, he grew up watching some things. He loves video games, but when it comes to some of these movies, he doesn't keep up. He hasn't seen everything, and it's but that's also kind of what I like about it, is that the listener doesn't have to be a nerd about all these stories to appreciate it. You can just enjoy the songs kind of for what they are and how they sound. But I told him I had 1,000 ideas, and there was a bunch of stuff that I didn't even get to put in the album that I have like notes for in my phone that just didn't even make it onto the album, because we don't, like, at some point we started running out of time. But I did have just this never-ending flow of like, we could do this, I could pull this from here, let's see if anybody would notice this Easter egg and all this other stuff. But that was the one thing I told Joe. I said, if you're going to trust my instinct on anything, it needs to be this. You have to put this. Probably Enigma 2 is going to make the most sense, because if we're going to do a sequel, that's when we decided, like, okay, we're not going to do another Ataxia for this. Let's do Enigma 2. I was like, this is the one thing that is going to drive people up the wall. They're going to be like, no fucking way.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't know if you watched this when you were a kid or if you remember it. He's like, yeah, I think I remember it, but I just don't really know. I was like, this particular theme song is such a big deal. It's bigger than almost any other cartoon theme song from that era. There's a couple that might be in that conversation, but the one that stands out the most across the board is the X-Men animated series theme song. It's that one. And it's such a big deal that it's I can't oversell it enough to you that, like, you need to do this. And so I just sent him the video of the song, like, here's what it is. And I played it for him one night in the studio just for my phone. I was like, here's what it is. He's like, oh, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. He was into it. And I was like, okay, good start. But then I drove it home another time and I sent it to him. And he's like, it's actually, I think, in the same key as the stuff I'm already writing. And I was like, there you go. Cool. So he sent over like the first draft of it. And I was sitting in my car listening to it. And I was like, oh, yes, this is it. He did it. This is it. And so I was like, I'm gonna have like I said earlier, I was gonna have a bunch of ideas about all kinds of stuff, and I'll tell you my reasoning for everything. But if you wanted to pick one that I think that you have to do, it's this. And he listened to me. He listened to me. It's cool because that, just circling back to your way earlier question about working with Joe, it's just like we trust each other.
Yeah,
we trust each other, and it our brains click with with everything. So he trusted me and he did it, and it worked out.
well, you succeeded in it, because literally the first time I heard it, that was I think my actual response was no fucking way. Like they did that. All right, so I wanted to ask, kind of, I'm gonna hit you with the hard hitting questions about it. We're still on Phenomena. Sure. 2, favorite song on the album. Okay, I'm gonna throw them all at you, so you have a moment. Okay. All right, favorite song on the album. What was the most challenging song for you to do vocally on the album and to write lyrically?
Okay. Okay, favorite song. It's obviously tough to choose. We had a tough time choosing singles as it is, just because we actually kind of liked them all. And sometimes that's not always the case. Like, you just have your ones you're like, okay, that's a good song, but is it a great song? And this one we couldn't decide. I think we went back and forth on at least a handful of them. I want to say probably my favorite. I've tried to stray from this answer because I've had the question before, but I think it's Corruption. One, partially just because it's the first one I wrote for the album. Once we knew it was happening, I was like, this one sounds cool. Let me do this. And I took from the comics origin. I took from the Batman Forever with Jim Carrey, and I took from Paul Dano's Riddler from The Batman, and a lot of it. So I really tried to mix those two concepts, two versions of the Riddler, into that song, and that one might have been the most fun, I think, to write, actually, too, because I was putting a lot of extra effort to that one. I was thinking about the different riddles that he's actually said in comics and in movies. I went even so deep as looking into that. I don't know if you remember, but the post-credit scene from the Batman that has like the secret website that you can go to.
Yes. Yeah.
I dug back into that, and I was like, okay, what did the website say? And I took from that and I was like, okay, here's what the answer to that riddle was. So I went deep on that one. So I think Corruption is just probably my favorite. Okay. That's a tough one, but yeah, sure, I'll stick there before I just ramble too long about it. What was next? You say toughest, right?
Yeah, most challenging to do vocally, and was the most challenging to write lyrically.
Challenging to do vocally. Kind of going through in my head real quick. That's tough. Each of them there are a couple spots in a few of them where I was like, it was a little tough to pull off. Honestly, there's a section in Castle in the Sky that's very thrashy and straightforward that I've struggled with. That's very it was probably a little difficult to record, and like when I'm doing it live, I have to really focus on it, because it's one of those things where as much as Joe and I align with everything that we do, like I said earlier, our backgrounds are different. This is actually a good example of that, where I come from giant nu metal background where I'm used to groove and rhythm and stuff like that clicks for me like that. Then he comes from a big thrashier background, like At the Gates, Arch Enemy, Metallica, stuff like that. So when he's writing a lot like faster paced parts like that, I didn't grow up listening to those, so like I can comprehend them, but they're not instilled in me the way nu metal grooves and heavy riffs are like that. So that part I'd say was kind of a difficult one to record, and then not really the song as a whole per se, but I think that section, and maybe like there's a section in Chaos Reigns. It's like the whole big build up towards the last big section of the song. That one took a little bit figuring of the pattern.
Yeah.
More or less had it like I knew I wanted it to end. I knew how it was going to begin. But it was a lot of just up and down and what are the ins and outs of this one little section. It's mostly that. None of them were like difficult per se as a whole. It's just it's little small stuff. That's always you don't want to get stuck too much on the small things, but sometimes those small things make a big difference once they're out there. And I guess difficult to write lyrics to. The instrumentals are pretty tough, so I just left those out. I was like, man, I'm not going to get anywhere with these. Just keep them instrumental, man. Sorry, that was dumb. That was low-hanging fruit. I apologize.
What was how did it go to have multiple instrumentals this time? Because I know you guys usually have at least one instrumental, usually.
One or two.
Yeah.
This one was a Joe decision. I mean, that's kind of his realm, is the stuff that he wants to be instrumental. That's his way of like getting out the little extra stuff, I think.
Yeah.
And just all the stuff sounds really cool when you piece it together, but not all of them really sound like they need to have lyrics on them.
Yeah.
Which I think what makes it a good instrumental is like, you can tell that this is supposed to be this. It doesn't sound like, oh, you have a clear chorus right here. What are you guys doing? You just threw this in there and didn't record vocals? That's not like, no, all the stuff that he did is really, it sounds like it's supposed to be an instrumental, and that's just his world. And I think this time was just like, well, we already know we're going to do an Enigma 2. And then the other ones, he had them ready and they were solid. And so we're like, let's just do 3, whatever. It breaks up some of the album, but in a cool way.
Yeah. So
it's not just this the entire time. You get a couple breaks, but the breaks are from me. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I think it's each of them has their cool things where you can just, again, because the band is very guitar driven a lot and focuses on that the instrumentals just fit really well with what we do. So having a third one, I think, I'm not gonna say it was a no-brainer, but I mean it was in a sense, but it works for a band like us. If you put three instrumentals in some other modern bands like us, it'd be like, all right guys, come on, let's get back to it. But for us, it just works. So this time we're just like, yeah, let's just do a third one. Just have another one. Here you go.
I love that you guys do instrumentals because I come from the era where there used to be, instrumentals were kind of unexpected on albums, and not a lot of bands do them as much anymore. So you guys sticking to it and always having at least that 1 or 2 instrumental, I personally love it.
Yeah, where they're like, okay, it's an instrumental in the sense that it's a 60-second interlude of just like kind of not dead space, but it kind of gives you a breather, which isn't bad per se, but then I would even hesitate to call it an instrumental just because it's like, okay, just maybe some acoustic chords which would be on some of those older metalcore albums. When you go back and think about it, like they work with the idea as a whole, but I wouldn't say like that's a song, an instrumental song per se. And I think, again, just because of the style of this band, it just works for us. So a third one, nobody would bat an eye at, really, other than being like, hey, that's cool, we get another one.
Okay. All right. So you already answered favorite hero is Batman. Who's your favorite villain?
Favorite villain. It's almost a cop out to say Joker just because he is such a notorious thing. I mean,
I take the cop out. I'll have to go with Joker. Just, I don't know. He fascinates me with
he's super fascinating, but I'll keep it more modern with actually right now I'd have to say is even a bad guy. It wavers back and forth, but I would say Magneto.
Okay.
I actually really like, I'm assuming you've gone through X-Men 97 all the way.
Yep.
So good. It was so good. It delivered on so many levels, man. But one of the first things I started talking about after when they released the first 2 episodes together, one of the first things I started talking about into the next few episodes also when I would have the conversation was just Magneto's exposition about how like he would just have these great moments where he would just talk and be like, I tried to do this, I tried to be better. I think his backstory is fascinating because it's grounded in the real world with the World War II stuff, which I think now is cool that they can actually touch on that a little bit more with him, to where he has every right to be mad about how humans have treated him and mutants and stuff, to where like, sure, maybe not every step that he takes is proper, but sometimes you have a hard time disagreeing with him, where you're expected to cheer for the X-Men and Professor X, but sometimes the points he makes, you're just like, man, I get it. And I think that's what makes a more exciting villain. Again, you could probably call him an anti-hero too, because he does do some good stuff. But I think it was a lot of his monologues from that really drove home for me. I was like, man, he's so interesting. And like in a couple of the X-Men movies, like James McAvoy had cool. I'm sorry, not James McAvoy.
Ian.
Ian. Yeah. I was thinking no, but the younger one. Why am I blanking on his name? The younger Magneto, not the. Ooh, I feel like a dick now. Where's my? I gotta have a Blu-ray, so I got DVD somewhere. Yeah. Fuck it. He had some cool moments where he's like discovering who he is, and he meets those guys in the bar at the beginning of one of the X-Men movies, and they're like Nazis that are just hanging out at the bar, and he like teaches them a lesson to start off the movie and stuff. And I was like, that's really cool. But I think it's just a really intelligent character to have come up with that's grounded in real life events and who you are expected to root against, but sometimes can't help cheering for. So if I had to pick one right now, I think Magneto is probably where I'm at right now.
All right. How fun is it to kind of keep the songs vague? And then do you enjoy watching the comments, people trying to figure out who it's about whenever you release songs like Castle in the Sky or, any of those?
Yeah, there were some that I tried here. So we also walked a line of, I don't want to beat you over the head with it. I want it to be obvious enough that if like you know the characters even decently well, you'll probably get it. But I want to put a good amount of like an extra layer of like deeper cuts and Easter eggs peppered in throughout. That was fun for me to really get to see who's paying attention to what, because it's what they do in the movies, especially they're paying tribute to the stories from the comics, and they kind of keep it at a level where like you can understand what's going on. You don't have to know every detail from the actual book, because it's Hollywood. They're also not going to give you that, but they also do hide little things for you to show appreciation to the people that are there for the extra stuff. And I kind of try to do the same thing. I kept it, like I said, that's part of the reason I wrote the stories as relatable, grounded in real life stuff. But I want the listeners that do know these stories, they can see that I was like, hey man, this is for you guys. I want you guys to know that I know what I'm talking about, but I also want to thank you for paying attention. And also on a different side of that coin, it also warrants giving the album multiple listens so you can catch different things you didn't catch the first time. Same thing you would do in some of these movies. So it's just kind of mirroring what the movies do for the audience member is what I'm kind of trying to do with some of the Easter eggs and the songs and stuff. So when I see people guessing, a lot of people have guessed right on most of them. Some of them guessed some kind of like weirder characters. I was like some of the C tier and D tier characters. I'm like, well, I didn't go that far down.
What's the weirdest one you've seen guessed?
It was one I can't even remember his name. I'd have to go back and look at the comment. It was one that I was not actually even familiar with. There were some people that thought Demon Killer was Ghost Rider, but then I would see like some other person would respond to that comment, be like, well, look how he's dressed in the video. Like that's clearly Constantine. So the people that like point out all the little details that I went for and they notice them, I'm like, yes, did it. I've seen it in some of the reaction videos. I've seen it in some of the comments, especially people that point out, sure, the X-Men theme song in Enigma 2. A big one for me though was in Chaos Reigns. That one is about Scarlet Witch. So I was like, this is my big connecting point to the original Phenomena, where this time in, I think it's the House of M storyline, she is upset at Magneto, her father, for choosing mutants over her. And so she's kind of left with like Vision is dead. She doesn't have her kids anymore. And her father has kind of chosen the mutant race over connecting with her. And so she's telling him, she's like, we're not the next step. We're not evolution. You chose this and now everything is falling apart. And then so she just says, no more mutants. Oh, we got a guest.
Yeah,
we got a
he busted
guest
in on us.
Oh, no worries. That's cool. Kind of surprised my dogs haven't wandered in here, actually.
Usually the door's locked, and he just like walked up in here. He was like, "No, I'm not having it today."
Oh, no, not today. I'm coming in. So I took those lyrics and I reversed them from what Gods Amongst Men was saying, like, we're evolution, we're gods. And I flipped it on its head and said, we're Scarlet Witch is talking to Magneto. And I said, we're not evolution, we're not gods, we're not the next step. We aren't what you think that we should be or we are. So I was like, this huge connection between those two lines. So the characters connect and the lyrics connect. And it also works with a storyline that is probably also coming down the pipe in the MCU. So that was a big fun one for me where I'm like, oh man, this has to work. I got to find the right spot for this. And I think that we did. And so when I saw people starting to point that out, I was like, hell yeah, you guys are listening, you're paying attention. And that's what I was going for.
That's always a fun thing too with concept albums like this, kind of going through and trying to guess, especially when it's on specific like source material. It's like, what is this song about? Like me and the wife love doing stuff like that, going through and it's like making our guesses and then having a deep dive and figure out what it is. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is fun. And that's what makes the album fun to listen to in the first place. But again, it warrants re-listens and stuff. So it's just fun. You want to make the songs good enough to listen to over and over anyways. But then when you turn it into sort of an experience, it's an extra added layer of what the album really is capable of. And it's great. So yeah, connecting the two was like, you don't want to just redo the exact same thing and make it boring.
Right.
But you also want to be like, no, it's just clearly like these two are meant to be kind of connected to each other in some way.
Okay.
So it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun seeing all that stuff.
Hell yeah. And it's awesome, man. You did a great job with lyrics and everything. It's been a lot of fun. The music videos have been fun. Watching them.
Those fell on my shoulders too. That was a part of like, okay, they're your songs. You tell us what needs to get done here. What locations you want to be at? What is this? What is the CGI stuff going to look like? That was all me too. So on a big level, yeah, it was stressful because I know what I'm up against. People have expectations. I need to deliver on so many fronts, and I couldn't have done it without my guys being super supportive and saying like, oh, we trust you, or that's a good idea. What about this? I couldn't absolutely do this without them. So I don't want to I'm not trying to take all the credit here, but that was kind of what Joe said about the videos too. He's like, all right, they're your songs. What do you think we need to do? So I put all the little details, and same thing with I put some Easter eggs in those videos too. So I'm kind of seeing who notices what on those. I tried though. I put in a shit ton of work, and I appreciate you saying that, man. I'm glad you liked it.
Hell yeah, man. You crushed it, man. For real. Okay. So I want to shift back to some of the other questions. Do you have a lyricist that you look up to or admire? We're about to start getting into some of the hard hitting ones for you.
The hard ones, like let's see if you're a real one. Nah, man, I fake it. I fake it till I make it.
There you go.
Honestly, some guys are probably like that. They're like, I don't really give too much of a shit. I'm just along for the ride for a little while, and then I'm gonna hop off when I'm ready to hop off. Yeah, I mean, I think I have to go with some of the easier ones, like Corey Taylor's definitely one. I'll just throw in any of my. If we're talking frontmen as a whole, or lyricists specifically, or
just lyrics. So I'll get to the front man here in a minute. We're going.
Okay.
Pure lyrics.
Yeah, because I can put dividing lines up here. Okay, yeah, lyricist. I'd probably say Corey Taylor for sure. I just was always intrigued by his story. The way, yeah, I'll just stop there before I ramble. Chad Gray from Mudvayne, especially LD50. Everything Jonathan Davis did back in those old days was fun. Even some of the jokier stuff, like he would do with like Ice Cube and Fred Durst on like the Follow the Leader stuff, like not the most profound things, but man, they were fun to listen to those songs. Not if you're easily offended by today's standards, so maybe don't go too far back. And then it sounds like a cop out, man, but I'd credit where it's due, man. Eminem for sure. It was just always impressive, and I don't know if you're a fan or not, but I really liked this. The Death of Slim Shady was an awesome album. Just getting back into concepts lyrically, just the way he went from some of it's Slim Shady, some of it's him, and just like the battle between the two and how it changes throughout the album. Just fucking great, man. There's really a lot. I'll just leave it at that before I just start naming guys that I just like.
Okay.
But ones that I pulled from like a lot growing up and stuff. Chester Bennington. There was supposed to be some announcement too, by the way, today.
Is it today? It was today, right?
Yeah, and right before I hopped on, actually, I saw some little timer thing that was counting down, and then it stopped after like 5 seconds, and that was the post. I'm like, well, what's going on? So maybe by the time we're done with this, they will have said something, and we can go back and check.
Okay, so you kind of already brought it up, but what's harder, being a vocalist or a frontman?
Yes.
Because there is a difference. Those who don't know, there is 100% a difference in vocalist, frontman. Because I mean, frontman, entertaining. There's a lot more that goes into it than just singing or screaming.
Right. Yeah. Both, and pulling off both is what is the task.
Yeah.
The task of a lifetime. Sometimes. I think being a better vocalist is harder because you can get up there and sound like shit, but jump around and make everybody think you're performing well. But I mean, but at the same time, it's, if there's obviously such thing as being a boring frontman. I mean, if you're nailing all your notes and all the tones, but you're standing there not doing anything, like, it's only impressive to a degree. But if I had to pick between the two, I think being a good vocalist is tougher than being a good frontman. It's pulling them off together is the real task.
Maintaining that balance of hitting the notes as well as moving around and being entertaining and
looking good and sounding good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who would you say is a vocalist / frontman that is top tier for you? Like, who would you put up there? You kind of already touched on. I feel like you were going to say Corey earlier, but
I'll say Corey for sure. But I could get into some other ones. Corey Taylor, absolutely.
You've seen them live, right? I'm sure you've seen Slipknot.
Oh yeah, I've seen him a few times. I saw him a few times, and I do have tickets to go see him with the Code Orange in Austin.
Oh, nice.
And for this anniversary of the self-titled album.
I've heard that. I've heard that those shows have been killer. They've just been which I would expect nothing less, really.
No, I mean, have you seen? They posted pictures of the set list, and it's all just. Dude, it's all the album songs from that album. And Corey,
I don't know how they go as long as they do on sets. I've seen them once, and granted, I'm a fan and everything, and I saw them once. Wasn't ever like the massive, like a huge Slipknot fan. It wasn't like what was on repeat, but I did like them, like several songs. And when I saw them, I was just blown away. I was like, Jesus, because I mean, it's been a couple years ago. I'm like, these dudes went for
they've been doing it for
an
a long
hour,
time.
45 minutes or something, and didn't take a song off. Like, balls to the wall the whole time. Corey, controlled the crowd the whole time.
Insane.
I was just like, God.
Yeah, it's insane. Pulling off both is, again, it's
and
impossible than going that long.
Which is a whole nother degree of difficulty.
Yeah. That's the easy answer, but it deserves to be there at the top. I waver back and forth, but I think Jesse and Howard from Killswitch, both great. I don't think metal in general is going to get much better than Howard Jones. Just charismatic, beautiful voice, great, just everything. It's untouchable. Yeah. And I think that's why I watched that Killswitch DVD so many times. And again, you can see Scott Lee just roaming around.
He's on pretty much all of those. I think the Unearthed, like all of them. He's there in
he's
some facet.
Anything up there, anything up there. And that was always cool because that was once I realized what that venue was, the Palladium, I was like, oh, I got to check that one off the list at some point. And now I have multiple times, and it's great. I love it there. But
were you kind of like in awe when you first played there the first time after watching the DVD so many times?
Yeah, because and it was with the first time that I did get to play there. I played both rooms, the upstairs room and that big main room. They're both really fun. But the first time I did get to play there was with Silence the Messenger. We played a New England Metal Fest, and we were like the second or third band on the main stage, so we played like real early. But I didn't give a shit. I was there. Bands that I was friends with were there. I got to be on that stage that I had admired for so long. It's one of those that, like, it doesn't matter what time you're playing. It's just the fact that you're there. You get to just exist on that platform is more than enough.
And that festival's legendary too. There.
Yeah, that is legendary for sure. That's one that I'm happy to. It's also because that's in our part of the country for the band. We're there fairly often. So that's great.
All right, so back to the hard hitting questions.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm drilling you now, man. Favorite lyric So I've made this a two-parter. It can be someone else's, or it can be your own, or it can be one of each if you have it ready. Because it is tough to try to like go through, the catalog in your brain and find one lyric.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's one of those like you just have a Rolodex of like what can I remember off the top of my head, and
we can.
Yeah, I remember this lyric, but is it necessarily a good lyric? Or do I just remember it because I liked it?
We can also throw in, a nice little audible here since Phenomena 2 has come out. Favorite lyric off Phenomena 2?
Okay, we can start there. I think the most important one, which would still lend itself to being my favorite, is probably what I was talking about a little bit ago. The inverse of we're not evolution, we're not gods. I drew their blood just like I knew I should. I think that one is probably my favorite one, just because it's a great connection. It's just very cool that worked out. But two, because it's important, and it does give Phenomena 2 that bit of, hey, this isn't just all new stuff. We are connecting it to the other one. It's not just separate. I mean, again, it doesn't have to. Not everything has to line up, but that one to me was very important. And I just happened to be one of my nights when I was just kind of looking through some of the storyline stuff. I was like, wait, what's she saying right here? I even took screenshots of like this thing so I could explain it. I was like, guys, look, this is going to work perfectly for this reason and this reason. I have to say that one. If I picked a one that's maybe not as important, excuse me, like, fucking coffee, that's maybe not as important, but I actually liked a lot because it's kind of like, in the movie it's campy, but in the context of the song it's kind of big. In Corruption, where I say what Jim Carrey had said, he's like, for if knowledge is power, then a god am I. And in the context of the song, it's just how it's delivered is very big and kind of epic. When you watch the movie, you're just like, well, this is not a fantastic movie, and it's Jim Carrey, so it's very dated to that time. And I love Jim Carrey. I'm a big Jim Carrey fan. Dumb and Dumber is one of my favorites. And he does do the role well. I mean, it's from a campy perspective. I mean, he's got that spunky, rubbery thing going on that works with a guy that's inquisitive and wants to like throw you off. I mean, but I think that was one of them. One last one. In A World on Fire, there was a cool one. It was the placement is what helps me with this one, of how the pattern turned out. But it's the I don't seek penance for what I've done. I seek forgiveness for what I'm about to do. And then it goes into a breakdown. And the lyric itself works with the religiosity of Matt Murdock, but also the delivery in the song. It's like, for what I'm about to do, but it also goes into a breakdown. So in a real world perspective, it's like delivering something to you. Just like he's delivering justice to the bad guys of Hell's Kitchen. That's probably a few that I would say. I was happy with a lot of them, and because some of it's me, some of it's like just my interpretation of stuff, and then some of it is just like, yeah, I just pulled that from the comic, or I pulled that from the movie. So I can't take credit for literally all of the lyrics, but just where I placed them, really. But I'd say those are probably some of the ones that stood out to me the most, though.
That's such a mean line right before a breakdown too. Like it.
Yeah, it hit. Yeah, that's saying the placement of that one turned out really cool. So otherwise, I'll just keep rambling and picking out all the other lyrics that I thought were cool, because I just had so much fun doing this. So I'll stop now before I get too rambly.
I'm gonna have to message Tim and ask him if that was like a little teaser he gave us. When I asked him who else he would do, and then he said Daredevil and Punisher and
I mean, he could have been. I don't know. I heard it too. Like I said, I kind of snickered a little bit because I was like, "Oh, he's right there. He's tiptoeing around it, maybe." So possibly,
like, those would be awesome. And then here we are a few months later, and they're out there.
But also cool. It kind of shows you though that, like, obviously the songs were already done when you guys did that interview, and to hear him say that he would have done similar characters, I was like, cool. Same track, cool.
Yeah. So did you try to balance as far as like hero villain at all whenever you were writing it?
I did. I did, because I didn't want to just do all heroes or all villains. And in a lot of cases, I mean, sometimes the villains are more interesting. Yeah. But I tried to do a good mixture of hero and villain, and also DC and MCU. I think it leans a little more MCU, maybe by like a song or something. Um, but I try to keep that pretty split down the middle. The reason I did Constantine, the Demon Killer song, was because I noticed on the last one, I forget the character's name, but it was one of the characters from the Watchmen from the first Phenomena. Clockwork, I think is the song. And I was like, okay, cool. All these other characters are pretty well known, but he's kind of got one little outlier. So I was like, maybe I'll do like one little outlier too. Like, not that Constantine is unknown, but he's not as popular as Superman. He's not as popular as
Right.
Daredevil. Like, you know what I mean? So I was like, I'll pick an outlier kind of too. Um, but I'd also here's another one too. They had already announced that they had confirmed a Constantine sequel with Keanu Reeves. So so I was like, I got to do that. I mean, his struggle back and forth between good and evil is just really cool. Plus, like the whole he was in a he was in a he was in a rock band. I think it was like a rock punk band in his origin story too initially, and so that's where I took the death of a rock star line. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I can use that as like a nod to Halfway Human, but also it makes sense for his character. Plus, he's a fucking booze hound, so like that's always interesting. Um, so he was my little one off, but um, yeah, sorry, I forgot even how I got there. A little tangent, but that's how I got to that character choice. But that's what it was. Is yeah, I tried to do a balance, so it wasn't just too much of one thing.
Yeah. Okay. Hell yeah.
Mm.
So, all right. Tips, Tom. Do you have tips for new songwriters as far as lyrically, pattern, flow, cadence, rhythmic flow, so forth, all that good stuff?
Um, well, yeah, that's a lot. But I would say for writing, I don't know, look, take a step back and look at the bands, but the singers that you like listening to. See what it is that you like about those vocalists. Is it the delivery? Is it a specific pattern that maybe you hear them do over and over? Is it the lyrics themselves? Is it like, do you like what they're telling you, or what? And again, how they're telling you, and see if any of that resonates with you, and is that something you not want to replicate as like like steal, but just like, could you do the same thing in your own way? Um, but do what I would say. Do what has always worked for me, and what I always felt the closest to was when I would write stuff that is about things that I've experienced or how I feel or that kind of stuff. Again, up until a concept album here, but that's what's always worked for me. I always felt disingenuous if I was writing something that just was like typical metal lyrics that just never resonated with me.
Yeah.
So I would say write what means something to you. Don't just write for the sake of writing, unless you use that as maybe an exercise to get your brain moving, which I've done before. But like, I would say write stuff that means something to you, and just kind of see how that turns out. Don't say the same things that have already been said in a very plain Jane kind of a sense, but I feel like I could probably just sit here and rant about this too. But just be yourself, because nobody's ever gonna be you. So if all you're doing is just trying to mimic the stuff that you like, it's not really gonna get you anywhere, because at least anywhere major, because it's already been done. I think a good example of that was when Whitechapel first came out. How many Phil Bozeman ripoff vocalists did you see all over the place?
A lot.
Everywhere. And it's not even that some of them sounded bad per se. Some of them were really good at it. But is it interesting at that point? No, not really. We've already got a Phil Bozeman, and you're not going to do it better than him. So, so find yourself, find your own voice, and this also could tie back to the Melissa Cross stuff too. Is like, find your voice, sound how you should sound. Don't just try to steal other people's tones and ideas, because I feel like now we're just getting into, and it has its place, don't get me wrong, because deathcore's evolved, and see, now I'm just going to start ranting, but like, deathcore's evolved, and we're in a whole different world of that now. So where vocal gymnastics are like the thing, and it's not my thing, but I appreciate a lot of it. A lot of it sounds really cool, but I'm not going to try to change what I do to mimic that sound. I already sound like me. I do what I'm going to do, and but nobody else is going to do that. So if you just start following the trends of whatever it is that's popular, uh, And again, I'm not slamming the modern deathcore at all by any means, because if anything, it's kind of like brought the genre back and given us more to listen to and do, and um, that's cool. I like it's just a resurgence of that, and I love that. Um, but just find yourself what you want to talk about, how you want to sound. I think that's about as important as it can get, because nobody's ever going to be able to be you and think how you think. They're only going to be able to copy it,
Yeah.
and at that point, you've already done it. So, do you?
Do you? What
Do
about as far
you?
as like cadence and patterns and stuff? Do you have any tips for that? Because I know, like you said, it's drastically different going from a deathcore band to Within the
It
Ruins.
is. It's very different. Yeah. I don't know. My brain always goes to stuff that's catchy. So like if you do like say what you will about new metal, and we'll probably fight to the death about it. But say what you will, but a lot of those songs were catchy as fuck though. They're real catchy. And I've always kind of been drawn to stuff that repeats a little bit, because that then it just gives you reason to remember the lyric, and then you know it's coming live, so you say it live, and it kind of creates a little bit more of a moment at the show. Um, and stuff that is not too repetitive. With metal, I feel like it's really easy to just do da 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 da
Yeah.
da da. It's really easy to do that, and that's just not interesting at all. And so I think the more you listen to, the deeper down the rabbit hole you go. I think you're going to find stuff that gets more interesting, and you may not even like it, all of it per se, but you're going to get ideas, and somebody's going to do something that just sits with you, and you're going to say, "Oh, hadn't heard that before. Don't even necessarily like the rest of this, but this was cool." And it's those little things that stand out. They're going to influence you, and maybe don't even repeat that exact pattern per se, but it'll say, "Oh, I remember when this guy did this. What if I did this?" It's just little stuff where you build. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. That's what we're doing. But it's finding ways to do it yourself, um, and just don't do the staccato like this. I mean, unless you're Cannibal Corpse, then fuck yeah, you go for it. You do, you you do that, man. That's all we want. That's all we want, dude. And then just win us a teddy bear at the end of it. But uh, if some people will get that one, but yeah, just I don't want to simplify it enough too much and just say don't be boring. But it's metal. There are ways to be interesting. There's plenty of ways to be interesting. So just find yourself, find that inner thing, like I was talking about earlier, and just I think repetitive is good to a degree. So be catchy repetitive, but not just boring repetitive.
Yeah.
There's a line between the two.
Yeah.
That's what always stuck with me, was just, oh man, this is catchy. I remember these lyrics. Works out for everybody.
So whenever you're writing a song, do you do obviously Joe sends you the song and you listen to it a lot.
Sure.
Do you kind of already have the pattern and then you write the lyrics and you kind of fit those lyrics into the pattern? Or how does that process usually go for you?
I think sometimes I might have, like, because it depends on how the phrase turns out. Like I do have like ideas sometimes, and I'll type them out in my phone and just be like, this is cool, this concept is cool, and I'll just go with it for like 5 minutes until I kind of run out of steam on it. And like, cool, then I'll revisit that later when I actually sit down and focus. I've told this before. I've even pulled over. I'm in the middle of driving to the gym or something. I pull over into a parking lot and I'm just like, oh, hold on, I gotta type this all out before I forget it, because I'll forget it. Some people are good about that. I'm not. I'm gonna forget that, and then boom, a really cool idea is out the window. You're probably not get it back.
That's the worst too.
That's the worst too. And you're like, fuck, I knew I should have written that down because it was super cool in the moment. And now I'm like, damn it, I lost a good idea. So I would say take the initiative to write stuff out before you forget it. But sometimes though, yeah, like depending on what that phrase is, I'll know right away. Like I'm gonna say da 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 comma da 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 whatever, and like I'll have that pattern, and so I'll type it out that way. So I can kind of remember that later when I circle back to it. Like I said earlier, I had that like a code in my head of how I want something to sound, how I want it to come out. But then sometimes I'll just write like lines and like a 5 or 6 word phrase, and I'll just let it sit there, and I'll be like, that could be a power phrase that goes right before a breakdown, or this is clearly like a line that needs to be in the chorus. It should be repeated, sort of a thing. And I don't even get to the pattern until I hear the song. I'd say if anything, I probably figure out those patterns more so once I'm sitting with the headphones in listening to it versus thinking of patterns ahead of time, because I'm going to have a much harder time if I'm sticking to my guns on a pattern and I try to put it to something that Joe's written, I'm probably shooting myself in the foot.
Yeah.
So I might as well. So I keep the lyrics just free flowing and just let them be. And if I need to chop them up, I'll chop them up.
Okay.
If I need to add to it, I'll add to it. But it's kind of like when people ask, do you write lyrics first, or do you give the lyrics to the band and then they write the song, or does the song come first and you write the lyrics? In my brain, I'm like, I don't know anybody that's ever done it that way. I don't know how you could possibly be like, here's a sheet of lyrics. The four of you go write this entire song around what I did. Like how would you ever do that? But that's I'm the musician. It's my job to know that, not theirs. But it's kind of that same thing though. It's like I think you need to build the foundation first, and then you can free everything else up on top of it and around it.
It just makes more sense for me to hear the music and be like, what is this song saying to me, like musically, and then me building around that is usually that's how my brain works with it.
Right. A lot of times that song will speak to you and you'll say, oh man, I'm feeling this way about this. What lyrics do I think work here? Songs will do that. So you can't just automatically be like, well, this song is going to be this. It might not be that. It could just feel off. It might not be that. So, yeah, I'd say I usually just have lyrics first and then I'll throw them in after.
All right. So do you have a favorite song to perform vocally, and vice versa? The other side, is there one that you dread? Not that you hate, but you know how sometimes we record stuff, we don't always fully think about, hey, I gotta do this shit live, and you know, breathing's a thing and all that stuff, and
not hate, but where I get like
you dread it a little bit, or not dread, but you're just like, let me get through this part.
Let me get through this part. Yeah. There was a couple of things like I like the song, but going from sometimes we open with Terminal from Elite, that opening breakdown from the album, and we'll go into Solace. I like that song, but I think there's 3 verses in it, which is already a stretch, but then each of them has different patterns, and like they're very intricate. I think again, I can't really speak to it because I wasn't there. It was Tim's, and I'm not slamming the song either. It's just that each one being different, and it's not my song. There's a lot more for me to learn the intricacies of, and where I'm like, God, okay, I can do it, but just I need to listen to it 43,000 times. But we've done it before, and I can do it. It's just I have to circle back to it. I will say anything from Creature is kind of tough because that even predates Tim.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, even Joe will tell you the songwriting on stuff from Creature and some of Invade is just not what it is now. And Creature was a very much, I think, a product of its time, where it was just like lots of riffs. And I think even Joe has been like, he's like, dude, I don't know what he was writing at the time. We just did it, and we stuck lyrics wherever they fit. So lyrically, some of the concepts, I'm just like, what's going on in this song? Joe, I'm not going to say which songs, but he's like, I think these two were like, lyrics was from here, and these lyrics were from here, but then the other parts of lyrics got swapped, and so the songs should be matched up, but they're not. And like, it was just, again, a product of its time. It was just how things were. But and again, I'm very big into song structure, so that's a lot of what nu metal was. It was very straightforward with structuring, and so when stuff is a lot more chaotic and all over the place, and just it makes it tougher to memorize. So if we ever did like some big anniversary of Creature and I had to do a lot of Creature stuff, I'd be a little worried. I'd get through it, but I'd be like, oh man, it's just gonna take a lot. Once I learned, let's see, what did we do? Tractor pull and everyone always requests tractor pull, and then sometimes we play it and people are like, you know. But there's been a couple where I'm like, cool, I got it, but that would probably be where it's like, oh man, it's gonna take extra work. All the newer stuff, like if I play something new from like the first Phenomena or Halfway Human or something, it's like that's a lot easier to grasp just because the structures are there, and they're not, you know, long drawn out, whatever. But I'd say so. And again, because of just where I'm coming from and my background, just straightforward deathcore and nu metal and stuff, my brain is just works a certain way. Not that I can't change it. That's what you do as a musician. You learn and grow and get better, like we said earlier. But if I had to, I'd say, yeah, early Creature stuff, probably just I would have a lot of
What's your favorite to perform? Do you have one song that you really look forward to?
Um, I really like doing Feeding Frenzy. Feeding Frenzy is great, and I really like doing Calling Card.
Okay.
Those are great. I'll split it though. I'll say those are ones that I like performing that like when I first learned them because they're not my songs. Those are ones I'm like, oh, this is great. My own stuff, I really like doing Deliverance. Deliverance is fun, especially with that breakdown at the end. And then Castle in the Sky has been hitting really hard, performing it live again with the breakdown at the end. Like that a lot too. So, but now with this new album out, we'll see what gets fun to play. I have my guesses, but I don't know for sure yet. That one we could circle back to in a different interview and see if my opinions have changed once we play some of these newer ones. Though.
Do we get to know which one you think is gonna be fun live?
I think if we started rehearsing Corruption before we last summer, actually, before we knew what the singles were going to be, we thought that was going to be one of them, and then we changed our minds, and so we kind of learned it, and performing it was fun. It came off really cool. I think Daywalker, if we play Daywalker, I think that one will hit pretty hard. Those are probably my two. What I'd like to see, actually, I'd be curious, is if we play The Last Sun, because we have never thrown a slow one into the set before. And the only reason we have that now is because when we did the Blackheart album, I asked Joe specifically for something a little more meaningful, because I was going to write it about, because it was a song Reckless, and that was about my friend that took his own life. And so I was like, hey, I want to write this song. Can you give me something that's a little special, that's a little different? Because here's what I want to write about. And that's how Reckless came out. And we never performed it, and I don't think that we ever will. But because that was so well received, we said, oh man, we should do another slow one. Slow. Slow for Within the Ruins is still fast for other people. So that's how The Last Sun came about, is because we're like, oh man, that turned out really cool. Clearly you have a knack for changing it up a little bit. Let's do another one of those. So we did that. So we'd see, excuse me again, it's fucking coffee, man. I think that performing that live would be an interesting, like, let's see how it's received, because it's approachable. So if you hadn't seen our band before, heard the music before, if you heard that one live, you'd be like, oh man, that's just very big and open, and it's heavy, and it has its feel to it, but it stands out from the other songs. So I would be curious to see how The Last Sun plays out live. I don't know if we'll do that one or not. We're still choosing some of the songs for upcoming sets, but that would be interesting, I think.
All right. And I have to say, whenever I saw Daywalker on the album listing, I got really excited. Obviously, those that are watching, I'm a little bit of a horror fan, so Blade is something that I do really
Blade's
enjoy.
right there. Yeah.
So I got excited about that one.
Yeah, and that one's one of the obvious titles too, or like some of the other ones you have to think about or read the lyrics to figure out who it is, or you probably wouldn't even know unless I told you. Like, I've seen some guesses on Death Mask. Not a single one has been correct on that one. Level 12, people who are saying, oh, it's an instrumental, but it does have a meaning. It does have a meaning of why we chose that title. So some of them are really easy, some of them are not. So
do we get to know what those are? Do you get to set the record straight, or are we just gonna let the internet keep guessing? Let them keep guessing.
I could let them keep guessing. Well, because it's one of those things where, like, I don't really know what. I could just respond in comments, but eventually it would be cool to have it like a known reason why I chose it. I'll give you level 12. Level 12 was is about Brainiac, the Superman villain. Who I kind of thought was interesting because he's like part alien, part robot, essentially. And when I was listening to it, I was like, "Oh, this sounds very sounds like technology. It sounds like a grid is like going off or something." And I was like vaguely familiar with Brainiac. Like I knew who he was, but I didn't know much, like a whole lot about him. So I was looking at some details, and I was like, "Okay, maybe this is okay." And then I saw something that stood out to me. It said how smart he is. It's his level of intelligence, I believe is what it was. His intelligence level just says level 12. And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Okay, so if it's about him and just the song visually made that happen in my head, I was like, okay, this makes plenty of sense, and I could have stopped it there. But it actually gave me a second. I was like, wait. And I asked Joe, I was like, hey, how many instrumentals are there? Am I missing anything? How many instrumentals does the band have total? And I looked them all up and I just double checked with him and he's like, we have 11. So I was like, oh, so if we put the other two instrumentals after this, if we put level 12 as the first instrumental on the album and the other ones can come after it, it would technically be the 12th one in line of all the other instrumentals. So there are already 11 that exist. And because it's the first one, the placement on the album makes it the 12th instrumental the band has done. So it works on 2 different levels.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, that one I can't say that I planned out. It was only that I just looked up the information to dig a little deeper into Brainiac, and I was like, oh, level 12 just sounds cool. That sounds kind of video gamey, which also the band is a little known for. So that just sounds cool on its own. But when I started doing that, I texted Joe and I said, wait a minute. Then that clicked. So it was, the 2-parter happened on accident. I'll say that, but once I found that out, I was like, "There's no way we can call it anything else.
Yeah.
It just has to go. It has to go here on the album, and we have to call it this. That's it."
That's so sick. All right.
Yeah.
So I have kind of a goofy, fun question for you.
Okay.
And full disclaimer, this question is inspired by, we've talked about Killswitch multiple times, Adam D, as well as Kyle from Body Snatcher. Do you have a favorite call out? And the reason I ask this is some are just straightforward, the normal stuff, and that's fine. It depends on the band, what goes on, and some go for just the off the wall shit that you wouldn't expect. Adam D and the stuff he would always say.
Right. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite call out that you've said or done, or even you've heard?
Just that, yeah. In any sense, is there a favorite? God, this is another one of those, like, man, you hear so many over the years, and some of them stick with you. You're like, that was fucking good. Some of them you hear like, that's a little cringy. That's not that cool. Vincent from Acacia Strain has some good ones. His are always like kind of funny or really almost like brutal, and I'm like, oh shit. The one that's actually kind of sticking into my head right now for some reason, I don't know if it's my favorite per se, but I've always liked it. I think it's from the first Carnifex album. I think it's "Lie to My Face." It might be a different song, but it's just, you hear it in the background. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
and it just goes right into.
I think that is from that song. I think you're right.
Is a lot of. I think that's the one. I don't know. That one always stuck out to me. I was like, that's funny, but it's also like, what the fuck? Like, what's about to happen? That one was cool. I don't know. I don't know if I can. There's so many ones that have been creative over the years that I would have a tough time picking one. I think I will say I have been drawn to the ones that are like the brutal sounding ones, like send somebody to the hospital, or like I always like ruin somebody's fucking day. I don't know. I always like that one.
Is that the ones you tend to do on stage? Do you go more brutal or?
We'll see. I try to walk a line because I don't ever want to be like going out of my way to incite violence, like in case something happens.
Right.
You never know these days if you're like, grab that guy right there and break his fucking neck and tell him I said to do it. Like, you know what I mean? So I try to walk that line, but I usually stick to some of the like some of the basics just because I don't want to. If I throw in some little like comedic stuff, it's usually just as like commentary in between songs, just to kind of joke the crowd a little bit. But in that serious moment, I'll usually stick to like just move that fucking pit or move the floor, or just like little ones like that. I don't get too fancy with them. That could change. Maybe that'll change. But for myself, I like the very straightforward ones because I think it's where my old school mentality kind of just goes straight to like, doesn't need to be fancy. Just get them going, but don't be, don't say the same stuff that everybody else has already said. But again, I don't want to be. I want that pit to move. I want it to look good. I want the circle pit to be cool. I want it set it off, go. But I don't want to be like having anybody be able to point the finger and say, "Oh, singer said to do this," and then liability issues happen.
Things you have to worry about nowadays.
Yeah, when back in like the MySpace days and stuff, it was just every man for themselves, and you did it, and you either survived or you had to sit the next one out. But that's right now. I'm just like, man, I want to sit at the back of the venue or whatever and just have a beer and just enjoy from the back. I'm too old for this shit. Lethal Weapon.
All right. So another weird question for you. You mentioned you played baseball growing up. So
Yeah,
you're athletic. So
I was.
I was.
I'm not. No, I mean, like I go to the gym every day, but I'm like,
Well,
you asked me,
you're at
like,
least familiar with athletics.
yes, absolutely, definitely, for sure.
Some people aren't as familiar. The musicians, they're more
Yeah, which
narrow-minded.
I wouldn't expect you to be. They don't. Those worlds don't always.
Yeah, I mean,
collide.
so this question gets a little weird sometimes, and it's fun. But I'll also I'll tell you Tim's answer because I remember because I use him as an example. But do you have any pre-show or studio rituals? And the reason I ask this because a lot of times athletes are superstitious.
Superstitious.
Yeah,
for
they
sure.
use rituals, stuff like that. Maybe like wear the same pair of socks, whatever. I have one tell me that they wear the same shoes every show. Tim, for example, I think he said he did push-ups every time before the studio just to kind of get the blood flowing and get ready to like do his thing. But is there anything you did or you do as far as pre-show rituals?
I have to give you a boring answer, man. I don't think that I really do because I'm not superstitious. Um,
It's been everything
I'm
from
not
like a fist bump to stretching. I think
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. I'll do the easy stuff that everyone's familiar with. I'll stretch. I'll do like my vocal warm ups and stuff, and I'll do that. I do purposely. I purposely try not to eat within at least 3 hours of the set. And if I do, it's like a few bites of something because I don't want to throw it up or have it sit weird in my stomach and affect my breathing or my tones or anything like that. So I try to eat if I'm going to have a dinner before. Sometimes I just wait till after. I try not to eat more than, like I said, 3 to 4 hours before the set. So I have time for it to digest and go away. If I have to throw it up, then I throw it up in plenty of time. If I got to take a dump, then I get that out in plenty of time.
You mentioned one a little earlier too that kind of goes with this, and that would be the beer and the whiskey for the studio.
Oh yeah. Those are always.
I had one say they drank light blue Gatorade studio. That's their preferred. Yeah, it was very specific, and I was like, okay, I mean that works. That's something.
If that's your thing, yeah. Because no, man, red hurts my throat. You know what I mean? I don't know.
I don't know it is what it is. I was like, okay.
Yeah, but I'd say that one kind of comes and goes depending on how I'm feeling. Like I think because like I said, I purposely try not to drink too much before it, just so I can stay focused. But I would say a shot of whiskey or maybe beer isn't out of the question. But I don't make that a part of my like actual routine.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool if I gave you some like fucking rock star answer of like, yeah, man, I got to get through like 3 or 4 shots and a couple beers before I can do my thing. Like no, that's just not it for me. If this was Silence the Messenger, like, yeah, it would be at a point where like I can be drunk. It doesn't matter. Whatever. I got this. Fine. Sure. I was younger. I was in better shape. They were my songs. I just feel like that I have too much to focus on before to where maybe even being excited but kind of nervous is sometimes part of it. An inner ritual where I know that I'm going to be like, all right, I'm kind of on pins and needles a little bit once we get closer. I'm excited during sound check when we roll up to the venue, and then as things get closer, I'm like, okay, do I still remember all the lyrics of this song? We haven't played it in a while, whatever. But no, I don't really have a super exciting answer other than just kind of typically getting my head straight.
Okay.
For shows specifically, and then in the studio, just making sure I have all my liquids down in the bottom, whether I need to hydrate or numb up my voice or coat it with some honey, any of that. I always have that stuff. That's probably the like, you really need all that shit? Well, sometimes, yeah, man, depending on what I'm trying to get out of a section of a song. Yeah, sometimes that's just what works for me. If I put you in my shoes and said, hey, you're going to want to do this before this part, you're like, no, I would never do that before this part. That's just me.
Yeah.
No, not push-ups. I never got that. Stretching for sure. Cause again, older. And then, like I said earlier, I'm a bartender. So I'm already like on my feet, bending over to, wash dishes or pick up trash or whatever it may be. So just making sure my back is in place. And sometimes I'll ask Paolo, actually, he's good with like physical therapy stuff, and he's a coach at a gym, so he's really good with that stuff. So sometimes I'll ask him like, "Hey man, can you loosen me up a little bit? Can you pop my back? Can you whatever?" Stuff like that. Maybe more old man ritual stuff.
Old man
Actually,
ritual.
is one, old man ritual. Yeah, it's like I gotta get in the zone.
You gotta throw the curveball questions like this out there because I mean most don't really expect it, and the answers are all over the place. I mean it is.
Yeah, and that's what I think. That's what makes it interesting always, and that's always why I like the behind the scenes stuff on DVDs. Is I like seeing everybody else's what they do, how they get ready, what their life is like, all that. Like, what kind of got you to where you're at right now?
Yeah.
How did you, because that's not necessarily what I need to do, but if there's something that works, then maybe I might follow that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's always interesting.
100%. All right, so I would be doing a disservice as much as you've talked about new metal if I didn't ask you
okay.
top 3 new metal bands for you.
I mean, you would.
I have to know. I have to know where we're at on like if you were to give me like, all right, hey, you're listening to new metal. These are my favorites.
I mean, it's easily Slipknot, Mudvayne, and Korn. I mean, it's easily those.
After them, after like your big ones, where we
right
go?
After once you get away from like the Mount Rushmore that everybody is gonna say, like, because then it's gonna go System of a Down, Deftones, Linkin Park, and then where I think it gets really interesting is like the B tier, C tier bands. I think that's where it's like that's where some of the nitty gritty fun stuff happens. And I'm like, ooh, that's a little bit not radio. I like that. I'd have to say Il Nino. The first 2 Il Nino albums are fucking so sick to me.
I think my first experience with them was Freddy versus Jason. I think they were on that.
Oh, okay, yeah, they were on that. They were on that soundtrack. I think it was.
I was like, who is this band?
Yeah, I think it was something from the Confession album. It's like, How Can I Live? I think that was the song that might have been on that one. Yeah. See, it's coming to me like that. Like I just remember that I soaked up so much of that shit. There's a lot, man. I don't know. Picking 3 is going to be tough. I really liked the first 2 40 Below Summer albums, the first American Head Charge album, Static X easily. I mean, you could put them into new metal, but also probably a couple different categories, really. There was one that's a pretty unknown. I mean, there were some people that knew, but actually really, when I would look back on, back on this about maybe 10 years ago, I think somewhere, if I looked at my post, it was a band called Atom Ship. They had a CD, they had one album, and it was called The Crash of 47. It's new metal, but it's like, it's not your typical like, oh, I'm insane, I'm crazy new metal. It's like a very thought out, like it's kind of stories. A lot of it's about the Roswell incident, and so, but that vocalist, he died unfortunately. Forget exactly how long ago, maybe at least a few years ago, but he had a really good voice. And so my point was that I used to sing along to that album a lot, and he was one of those guys where I was like, I'm kind of learning how to sing and hit cool notes without really realizing it because of that album. Lastly, I'd probably throw in there like Spine Shank. Loved Spine Shank. Edema. Flaw was cool. What else what is it? What else do I have down here? I mean, of course, Disturbed. I'm not going to leave out Disturbed. But then they got pretty quick into like radio rock, kind of pretty quickly. The first couple albums, yeah, I'd say so. But Limp Bizkit. I mean, of course, Limp Bizkit. I don't know how I even forgot about that one. Nothing Face. See, I can't just pick 3. Like I'm just going to go down the rabbit hole. So there's a lot. There's a lot. I think each one kind of, although a lot of them are kind of like forgotten for the most part, once you get into the conversation about them, then it kind of gives them their moment to shine a little bit, where you can kind of reminisce. And like I might even listen to one of those. I'm going to go meet up with my girlfriend in a little bit, and I might even listen to one of those on the way over there. You know what I mean? So but if you hadn't asked me, and if I didn't start getting into that new metal mindset, maybe I wouldn't have. But it's cool to just kind of keep them alive a little bit. And some have lasted. Some of the ones that did last are still doing okay. But some of them just like that was their time, and that's cool. and it was what it was. But again, if I don't shut up, I'm gonna not shut up. So, telling me to pick 3 was already a bold choice on your part.
It was.
Listed
I knew what I was getting into,
like
but I accepted it.
I did like a dozen, I think.
Okay, so I asked him the same question, so I'm gonna ask you: do you have any fun tour stories for us? Ooh. That you can say. Let me put that disclaimer. That you can say.
Yeah,
because there's definitely stuff that probably does not need to be said and just left on the road, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, what happens in Vegas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, not a whole lot like for Ruins, because I mean, I've there was like a small period like when I first joined the band, but I mean, we're drinkers, and I mean that's everyone knows that though.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Maybe own a brewery, that level of, of drinking. I'll say actually one of my favorite ones though is this is just what touring is. The very first tour that Silence the Messenger ever did, and this was actually before Paolo was in the band, but he's even familiar with the story because it was kind of a big deal. We were doing our very first tour ever. We had just going from Texas to Florida and back, like a 2-week run. And we had booked it ourselves. We had no label. We had no booking agent, no nothing. And we had even printed our own CD, like back when copying CDs was still a thing.
Oh yeah.
We had our EP out at the time and printed those out and made little paper copies. My guitarist stayed at my house a few nights. We printed all those out. We messaged people on MySpace, and we just did it ourselves. Anyways, the fucking second night of that tour, we made it to some small town off the top of my head now. Refugio, I think. Refugio is the name of the small town. I always remember because I was like, Rufio. Yeah. See, I'm dating myself here, but you get it. The second day into that tour, we were driving through the night because it's what you had to do. And we had bought a van from some local band here in town, and they wanted like $1,000 for it, and we're like, it's a lot of money, I don't know. And then, so you're young, you don't have any money, and we went to go check it out. And when the guy was backing it out of his garage, he scraped the side of the van on the garage, and immediately my guitarist James, he was like, $850, and they're like, all right. so we got this $850 van. You don't know shit about vans. It wasn't probably meant to be pulling a trailer in the first place, but we bought it and we did it. The second day we're driving, and as the sun's coming up, literally the van's engine catches on fire. Like, we're driving on the road, flames are coming up and kind of blocking part of the windshield, so we got to pull over. And and James always gave me shit for this, but like I grabbed my laptop before I woke him up.
Those priorities.
Like 5 in the morning. Priorities, yeah. It was like 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, so like the sun's barely coming up. And we used all the bottles of water we had in the van to put the fire out. And we're like, shit, what do we do? We're only day 2 into this thing. And so we just were like, well, we don't know what to do. We parked it on this guy's driveway. He's one of those guys that has like a big property, a long driveway. We're like, well, he's far away, he won't notice. But apparently this guy was watching us from his window. Not really much more to the story than that. Otherwise, other than that, he did come out and yell at us. We're like, dude, it broke down. What are we supposed to do? But the crazy part though is that is not just that, but that I called my parents. Both of them left their jobs and drove separately, and they brought I was driving a 4Runner at the time. I think it was like a 2003 4Runner. One of those just like hoss of a vehicles. I'm not really a big car guy, but I loved that car. They drove it out because I think we were maybe a couple hours, 2.5 hours out or so, nothing super crazy. They drove it out, and we attached the trailer to that, and the 5 of us fit into my 4Runner. And our other guitarist before Paolo was a big dude, and it was just the 5 of us in a 4Runner. The remaining whatever was left of that 2 weeks, which was most of it, Florida and back in the 4Runner. It wasn't obviously not like a financially successful tour. It was just that it was like, you do what you have to do. You scrape the bottom of the barrel for as long as you have to. So it's funny talking about it now, and it was frustrating then because it's like, well, we got like a couple days out of the van that we put all this money into. Not all this money, was all we had. On a tour that we're already scraping by on anyways. We barely even have shirts to sell. We did have some, but not a lot. And that always stuck out in my brain as like, that would deter a lot of people from from continuing down that path of like, oh man, stuff can go bad this quick. Why would I even keep doing this? And but that was my very first tour ever. Like I played a couple like shows from in Houston or something, but it's only a few hours away. But no full length tour, let alone the first one was 2 weeks, to the other side of the country and back. And on day 2, the fucking van blows up. So, I always took it though as a learning lesson and if you really care about it and you really, want it, then you'll do what you have to do. And there's probably a different aspect to that now with how much the internet's involved and, like you're not printing CDs anymore. You're not printing your own flyers. I did a shit ton of that, but something about that van blowing up is like, yeah, it's funny. It's funny to be like, hell yeah, man, it blew up and we were fucked and did the whole thing in a 4Runner. I mean, that sucked, dude, because there's nowhere to sleep. We slept at Walmart's. We slept in the van the best that we could. Sometimes we just sleep on concrete, but it's what you did. And so it's funny, but it also is like a valuable thing that I will never forget is that, if you really want this, then you have to put in that extra work that some people just aren't willing to. And that's fine. If you want to be like a house musician, like in your room recording stuff for just your own sake or just making your own videos, that's cool. Not everybody needs to tour. It's not, but that one was just like such a big deal so early on that it was just kind of like a learning moment.
Yeah, it takes a special person to tour and a lot of dedication and sacrifice to do it, to be able to go on tour.
Yeah, every time, always. I mean, I've left for weeks at a time with like $60 in my bank account, and because I spent money on printing merch for the band, or I was maybe in between jobs for a while. Like I worked at Best Buy for a long time, but during the holidays you can't be off, so eventually that had to stop when we got signed. And so I would leave with like next to nothing in my bank account, and I remember I think at least a couple tours where I would buy a lot of bread and peanut butter, and whatever I would eat would be at the venue, and we would get a case of water, and that would be our, and so it's just the early days are rough, man. But it's like I wouldn't trade any of that for anything, because now I learned like if I need to sleep on a couch, I can sleep on a couch. I can fall asleep in the car. Like if I gotta take a shit somewhere, I'm just gonna go. I've seen the worst of the worst when it comes to bathrooms. I'll do what I gotta do when I gotta do it. Yeah. But it's just like, as funny as that is, it's like that you learn a lot from those early days, and so it does take a special person to go through that and to want to do it, even though it's gonna happen to you over and over and over.
So I have to ask: is Within the Ruin still prefer Walmart parking lots for? No, they've grown out of this, because that used to be the staple. I remember
it was. Oh, I participated. Yeah, I remember.
Tim, when I first met him, when he was on with She's a Liar, they actually all come to stay with us that night. They drove, and we were like, Within the Ruins, you're welcome. Like it was open invitation to both bands. Like y'all come on, stay with us. Yeah. And he was like, no, Joe and them like Walmart parking lots. Like they're gonna go stay at a Walmart parking lot. Like that's just what they do. And I was like, okay, well, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, no, we haven't. I think there's been a couple times where like that's just what I think maybe on the like on that, because we haven't done really a full tour since before COVID. The last thing that we did of like a full run, like we did it, like I said, a handful of dates with Oceano, but that was like 4 shows, I think. So I mean, you're barely getting your feet wet, but like weeks at a time. Like if we have to make a long drive and stop somewhere, like we usually nowadays we just get hotels. I mean, we're older now, and it's like there's no need to go through the Walmart stuff again. I've done it so much for so long. It's just we have the money to do it. Let's stay at hotels. Like there's no need to do that. There's just every once in a while, like on a long drive where you don't have a choice. You have to be at that next date. You don't have a day off to drive. Sure, whoever's driving might drive a little bit, stop at a Walmart for a couple hours or something, but then pick back up and go. Yeah. But no, I can't remember the last time I was just like, at least in Ruins, but even with Pal and I's old band, I think the last time was, that would have had to have been 2015 or so. Okay. Yeah, no, they had their place, man. They were fun, but it was,
they used to be the staple, I guess.
That was the staple. Everybody did it. It was easy. And there's only like 1 or 2 parts of the country where I think certain Walmarts would say, no, like you can't stay here. And so you're like, all right, I got to find a truck stop or something. But most of them were cool with it, and it was easy, and that way you're right where you need to be in the morning. There was a thing that always just sucked, was that dreaded walk of shame in the morning when it was sunny. The sun hit your van, woke you up, and you're all sweaty, and you're like, I gotta take a piss. So
Yep.
you're walking like a dead bird all the way to the front door and to find the restroom.
All right. So I've asked a lot of questions, took up a lot of time, so I only have just a little bit left for you. I did want to briefly touch. You released Blackheart, COVID, right?
Yep. Kind of at the beginning. Yeah.
How was releasing that during COVID? Because I know there's a lot of albums, had trouble with it. Kind of got swept on the rug, if you will, with not being able to tour and do the full cycle of an album. How was it for you guys?
I mean, it was an interesting time, and it was just the choice that we had made because we had put out 2 singles with me when I joined the band. We put out World Undone and Resurgence, but it's just sort of like a taste of like, hey, here's the new guy here. Let's sit on this for a little bit. But by the time we were finishing up that last As I Lay Dying run, it was like, okay, it's about new album time, because we take a little bit longer to put out albums than other bands do. Some bands pump them out like every year and a half or so, maybe 2 years, and like that's cool. But again, we have other lives and stuff that we're doing now. But even so, it's a Within the Ruins album, so there's going to take a little bit extra time to be intricate with it. That's just the style of the music. So we were getting to that point where like, all right, we're already kind of pushing it. We were pushing 3 years or so since Halfway Human, and I was like, we need to do one. So we recorded it, and everything was pretty much getting ready to go. And then of course COVID happened, so we reached that level of, okay, do we sit on it and just wait and let the momentum die, or do we put it out and just kind of give it? And every band made their choice. I don't think there was a right or wrong really in anybody's choices at that time. We were just pushing the length of time in between albums, so we just said, let's just do it, let's put it out, and then who knows, maybe this whole thing goes away quickly and we can just get back to work on it. Lo and behold, it really didn't. And then by the time it was over, it was just, well, we played some fests and some one-offs and stuff here and there, and then on top of that, Joe had a kid at the end of COVID, and so you can't be gone with that. So kind of just the way, once COVID thing happened though, and we all kind of it was like a bit of a reset for all of us as individuals, where we just kind of got back to doing normal life stuff. And we were like, not that the band would ever get like put on hold or we would take a break or anything by any means, because we all love this, and even if it isn't as fully active as it used to be 10 years ago, none of us plan on leaving this. We love doing it, but it was just one of those, well, now things have changed since we put that album out, and we were like, well, let's just do what we can for a little while. And then eventually Joe was like, okay, I think I've started to write again. So it was a little bit of a bummer, because I came into the band, but it's nobody's fault. You can't predict these things; that happen. But it was a little bit of a bummer. Like, I joined the band and was super excited, and we basically hit the ground running, and then I pour everything into that album, only for just silence. It was received well, like amongst the fans and everything. So I don't mean silence in that sense, just that like touring stopped for everybody. So everything came to a halt, and it was just like, could not have been worse timing. So, but I mean, that was then, and it was cool. And I'm just glad it's out there and people liked it, and it's cool. I got that off my chest, which was also just a big thing. It was just helpful to me as a human being to just get that out there into the ether. So yeah, again, it was a bit of a bummer, but I'm just glad that I'm glad the album exists, because if we had held off, or if we didn't write it or anything, I don't know if it would have turned out the same. And I'm glad that it is what it is, and it just has its place, and that's I'm fine with that.
Okay, I just had to ask about it, because it's definitely been a mixed bag for bands and everything during that time on what to do, what not to do, and how everything went. But I've took up a ton of your time, so I have one final question, and we're not even a question. It's just, I want to let you instill some advice. So to aspiring vocalists out there, or to people that are, thinking about picking up the mic, or whether they've picked up the mic and they're trying to find their place, what kind of advice do you have for them as far as vocalists, and what kind of knowledge can you instill upon them?
I would say in general, I'll kind of repeat what I said earlier. Be yourself. Do what feels right to you. Don't just straight up copy or rip off anybody, because that's even more prevalent now than it was when I made the the Phil Bozeman reference earlier. Like, it was bad enough back then and it was obvious, but now that just everybody can sit in their room and just record their own stuff and do, it's even worse, I think. So I would say be yourself, in as much of a way as you can. But also, if you really want this, stick with it, do it. It's tougher now, I think, in certain ways, but it's also easier in some ways. So just stick with it. And eventually, because it's so easy now to use technology to bring band members together, you don't have to live in the same state as somebody or even the same country anymore. If you're good enough at what you do and you can show the right people that you're good at it, you can be part of something, something big, if that's it, if that's what it came down to. What I used to say was I actually had a bunch of offers back in the day to do other bands. It was always like, yeah, you're in Silence the Messenger and that's cool, but like, would you ever join our band? Would you ever do this? And like, I'm not going to throw names out there, but I had at least like 4 or 5 offers to join bigger bands, and I always said no, because very steadfast, and like I helped build Silence the Messenger to what it turned into, and I was very proud to do that, and I stuck with that. Even like I filled in for some friends, I helped out, but I always used that as like a platform to meet other people, and I never gave up on STM. And then it eventually did fall apart, but I can happily say at the end of it, I gave that thing everything I had, and I even tried to get replacement members here and there for for almost every position now that I think about it. But my point is that nowadays I would actually say the opposite. I would say if a cool offer comes your way, I would say go for it. If you want to stay steadfast in what you're doing and something that you built and that's your baby, fuck yeah, stick with it. I have all the respect for that in the entire world. But I would say, because just think the landscape has changed, if you get a cool offer, I'd say fuck it, go for it. But that's just I'm 36. That's just my I've gone through experience of a lot of stuff over the years where at this point I would say, yeah, do it. Take that chance. Go for it. And if your bandmates are good enough friends with you, they'll understand that was an opportunity for you and you should take it. I remember when Paolo first joined Within the Ruins, I was a little upset. I was jealous. He was filling in on just one All-Stars tour, and he wore STM shirts on stage every night, and it was going to be a tool to help us rebuild as the band was falling apart, and then turned into a real thing. And then it turned into him like helping find a replacement for him. And I was salty. Joe will tell you there's this funny story when they played San Antonio. We all got drunk and stuff, and they were about to leave, and I slammed their van door. I was like, thanks for stealing my fucking guitarist, and I slammed the fucking van door. It's funny now, but at the time I was salty and I was kind of butthurt because I was so steadfast in like making STM work. Now I look at it and just like, sure, I probably had a little right to be angry, but also like, Ruins is a bigger band. They need to do what they need to do. It wasn't personal, never was. If anything, like we were friends and stuff still, and I don't ever blame Paolo for taking that position. So it's just funny how your perception changes of stuff, or your perspective maybe. And I would say just do what feels right to you, but importantly, be yourself. And just, if you really want to do something, if you really want to go somewhere with it, I would just say just stick to it, because there's enough going on right now that I think everybody could have a decent shot at it. Not everybody, but if you're good enough.
Yeah.
If you're good enough, you know the right people, it could be coming down the pipe whether you know it or not. So stick with it. Work hard, but stick with it and keep going.
Okay. All right. Well, sir, if you will, plug all things Ruins. I'm going to have in the description Within the Ruins Spotify, as well as a link just straight to Phenomena 2, your link tree for Ruins, and as well as your personal Instagram. Is there anything else you'd like to plug? Any tour dates you can announce or anything? Now is your chance. Please plug away, promote. Also, Joe's Brewery. Let's plug that while we're at it.
Okay.
Gotta support the homies.
Gotta support. I've been Steve from Within the Ruins. I'm Steve the Mess on everything. I'm not going to call it X. It's Twitter, Instagram.
I do the same thing. Don't fret.
Yeah.
I'm too old to change at this point, I think. It's like,
yeah,
it is what it is.
See, there's the get off my lawn in me. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm everywhere at that. Within the Ruins has all the socials: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I run most of those, so if you leave a comment or a message or anything, I can't see everything, but I do. Especially lately, I've been doing my best to respond to stuff. So hit us up on socials. Uh, we did announce some tour dates yesterday. The second leg of the Phenomena 2 tour. We're doing some headlining dates up north with a band called Dreamwake, and then we have some right before that here in the south and in the middle of the country with a band called Gore. So those are going to be fun. So check us out on those dates, and I would recommend, if we are coming to your area, don't skip it. We're not going to be gone a whole lot. We are going to be trying to do more work for this album, but if we come to your area or even close, go see it. And I would say that as a rule of thumb for any band, because you just never know what's going to happen. Go see your favorite band. If you have them, go. So we have those dates coming up. I think we might be announcing at least maybe one more thing for the end of the year, and then we're just kind of figuring out what we're going to do for spring, summer next year right now. And then to cap all it off, Phenomena 2 is out now. Go check it out. We got 3 music videos for Castle in the Sky, Demon Killer, and The Last Sun. Go check those out. We put a lot of work into those, and the album itself. So I hope you guys have as much fun listening to it as we did creating it. And I will see you guys on the road or in the comment section, wherever.
Sir, congratulations. You're also the longest guest we've had on here as far as like interview length. We've been chatting damn near 3 hours.
I was gonna say, what fucking time is it? It is 4:59.
We have been at it for a while, so props to you.
All right.
It's been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for coming on and your time today, man. I really, really appreciate it. And next time Ruins is in Tennessee, I'll have to come out and watch you guys throw down again.
Come hang out. We'll have a beer or something.
Hell yeah, man. Sounds like a plan. Thank you so much for coming on, man. You have a good one.
Oh, Tinbridge. Fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Tinbridge. Check out
We mentioned it.
We said it. We did a whole hat turn and everything. Yeah. Tinbridge, Joe's Brewery. He doesn't really ship anything anywhere, although I said that he shipped it to me, but I'm special, and so that's different. So if you want to try Joe's beer, you got to go to Westfield, Massachusetts. Go to the brewery, though. It's really cool. It's fun. There's always cool food trucks there. And you might catch Joe walking around. So go check that out. And there's merch there if you want to buy it too. Oh, yeah. So now, yes, let's sign off and hit this 3-hour mark, and I'll see you when I see you.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you so much again. I appreciate you, Steve, and you have a good one, brother.
You too, brother. Cheers.
Right, man. Thank you all so much for watching or listening to this episode of Behind the Vocals featuring Steve Tinnon and Within the Ruins. Please check out the links down in the description and check out Within the Ruins Linktree, as well as their Spotify and the link to their brand new album, Phenomena 2. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys and gals on the next one.